A bit of order, please. We'll kick off in 1 minute. So if you could prepare yourselves, please. Thank you. Okay, members, you're all very welcome to the Policy and Resources Committee, Wednesday, the 9th of March, 2022 at 7 p.m. from the Green Genoma here, and also members via WebEx. Prior to starting, I want to advise that there will be no automatic muting on WebEx, and I will alternate between the Chamber and WebEx with regard to priority of speaking. And tonight, as usual, the 3-minute rule will apply to all. So with that, I welcome you tonight, and we go straight into the agenda. And the item first on the agenda is apologies. First I will go to, is Councillor Maguire available? Councillor Maguire? Okay. Councillor Michael Duff?
Okay, thank you. Just in
Any
the Sinn Féin
apologies?
group, there are apologies from Councillor Withers, Councillor Podrigan Kelly, Councillor Catherine Kelly, and Councillor Maguire will be late. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Barry. We now will move on to Councillor Irvine. Councillor Irvine, on behalf of the UP.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Bell, first of all, who's at another meeting. Councillor Wilson, who may be late. Councillor Warrington, who's going to be late. He's at another meeting. Possibly Councillor Rainey. That's as far as I know, and hopefully that's the list completed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Irvine. We now move on to Councillor Robinson on behalf of the Democratic Unionist Party.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies, but Councillor Elliott will be late.
Okay, thank you. And now move on to Councillor Garrity on behalf of the SDLP.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. Apologies this evening from Councillors Blake and Gannon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Now move on to single parties or independents. Have we any apologies? Councillor McAleer?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Apologies for Councillor Eamon Keenan. He's running slightly late. He hopes to be here in the next 5 minutes or so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emmett.
And Chair, I have arrived.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. We'll now move on to sign the minutes on confidential minutes of previous meetings, and that's held on the 31st of January and the 9th of February 2022. I have signed those, so we can move on. Item 3 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest for tonight's meeting? Councillor Irvine?
Yeah, under 6.1, sub-item 1.4 with regard to Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next one we have is Councillor Baird.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep myself right here. Item 5.2, as an executive member in Nilga in relation to what is currently referred to as the pre-election period of heightened political sensitivity. Was an awful lot easier to say Porta just on that paper, but I don't think there's any problem with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Coffey?
6.3, representing I work for United Union. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor McAleer?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, confidential 10.1 as an employee of Southwest College.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baird, can you take your hand down, please? Okay, thank you. And that seems to be all. Sorry,
Chair, also,
Celine here.
yeah, 10.1 as well, just in relation to the discussions there
Okay.
and staffing matters.
Thank you, Celine. Okay, that seems to be all the declarations of interest. The next thing is matters arising. Now, we'll first of all take the meeting on Monday, the 31st of January 2022, 7 p.m. And we'll go for page 1, page 2, and page 3. Okay, no matters arising from that. The next item on the agenda is to go for the matters arising with regard to the Policy and Resources Committee on Wednesday, the 9th of February 2022. And we'll go through page by page. Page 1, page 2. Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 2, we have received a response from the Housing Executive in relation to the Council's letter regarding the closure of the Regina Chaley facility in West Belfast. So that is really setting out the provision that the Housing Executive have made and also provided assurances in relation to alternative accommodation, Chair.
Okay, members, can we have a proposer to note? Councillor Thompson, and seconded by Councillor Irvine. Councillor McAleer, do you want to come in that?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. In relation, I suppose, to the correspondence that's been provided, I am appreciative of the work that the Housing Executive has done, and it lists in detail there some of the provision available for, so specifically people and women affected by domestic abuse. Obviously, yesterday we celebrated International Women's Day, and there were many eloquent speakers across the chamber talking about that. And it's a fact as well that more women are murdered here in the north as a result of domestic violence than any other part of Western Europe per head per capita. So they're quite frightening statistics, and obviously, as is noted in the correspondence, the individual concerned is confident and working hard to implement increased temporary and permanent solutions for homeless women. I think that's vitally important given the stats, given that the figures are actually 3 times higher than those in England and Wales. This is a unique situation, and I think very recently there they celebrated 50 days of occupation of the Regina Chaley house. So again, I would just like to put on record my support for the workers there and for the remaining resident there, and hope that this can be sorted to a satisfactory outcome. Just in relation to the last page and the starting paragraph on that page, that it's the view that the commissioning of new service provision and extension of current support provision will mitigate against the closure of Regina Chaley House. So I'm hoping that means that it's going to prevent the closure as opposed to opening somewhere else and proceeding with the closure against the wishes of the staff and the residents there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We've heard it proposed and seconded. We note the correspondence. Anybody in disagreement with that? Okay, that's passed. We now move on to page 3. Alison again, I think 4.2.
Yes, Chair, thank you. And it's a response from the Department of Education in relation to the Council's representations about to review the terms and conditions for bus drivers, and they've really referred this on as a matter for the Education Authority. And just to confirm, Chair, we've received no correspondence from the Education Authority on this matter.
Okay, Councillor Eamon Keenan.
Thank you, Chair.
First of all, can you note the proposed noting of the correspondence?
Yeah, I'll note it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I suppose with regards to the letter, I do note that the letter was sent from ourselves on the 24th of January, and the letter was returned by the Education Authority on the 18th of February. And this is a delay of 24 days. And I was just wondering, was the letter sent via email or post email? Yeah. So it's 2 months turnaround, you know. So it does seem to be a recurring problem, you know, with this. So such a delay, you know, very often the urgency of the matter has passed, or in some cases too late or not relevant. So it's disappointing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is yet another example of a department at Stormont washing their hands of responsibility and seeking to blame a front-facing public agency entirely. Now, obviously, it is the remit of the Education Authority to enable recruitment of staff that it employs, but the policy framework within which they operate, the long-term problems that have existed around recruitment of vital staff, including bus drivers, is something I think that the Department of Education has to take responsibility for. So I'm happy to note, but this again is a very evasive response. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We've had it proposed and seconded that we note the correspondence. Anybody dissenting from that? That's passed. Okay, so we're now moving on to page 4. Again, Alison, 4.3, I think.
Chair, that's correct. Chair, this is a response from the Health and Social Care Board regarding the Council's representations in terms of qualifications, and specifically if there is provision for candidates who are trained on the Republic of Ireland's list to transfer across onto the Northern Ireland performance list. So you'll see the response really details the respective qualifications, the difficulties around that transfer, and then just setting out the wider workforce issues that are being faced.
Okay, first speaker is Councillor O'Coffey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, proposed to note this. I think this response actually shines a light on, again, some of the failure on behalf of the relevant department really to bring forward legislation which would be required to address the issue. And the issue is basically that doctors who are qualified in the Republic of Ireland are not immediately able to take up positions in Northern Ireland. Now, we know that we, of all areas from Anonoma, experiences the greatest crisis in our primary healthcare services, and indeed wider. But the GP crisis that's here will require every avenue to be pursued. It's not good enough that we basically have a system where the response back from the Assistant Director of Integrated Care, Head of General Medical Services, is admitting that we're fully aware of a close relationship we have with the Republic of Ireland, but in the meantime, the current arrangements must remain in place. This is an acceptance that the current barriers that exist to Republic of Ireland qualified GPs will continue to pose a problem when it comes to recruitment here in Northern Ireland. And this is, frankly, it's insane. It doesn't make any sense. And it is only going to make this situation worse. So shocking indictment, actually, of the policy that the legislation that's pointed out here has not been brought forward in the last period in the Assembly. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next to speak is Councillor Stephen McCann.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to second that correspondence. And I suppose it does show some of the constraints and some of the issues that we would have as a council area, and indeed the west of Ireland, and attracting people to our hospitals, and in this case our GPs. And an island as small as ours, you know, we should be looking to address these restraints that have been shown up in this letter. And I suppose it might be outside the limit of the Assembly. I'm sure I stand to be corrected. You know, the GMC I think is a UK-wide organisation, possibly. You know, so but I think we do need to be looking at a holistic approach as to how we can address these concerns. And you know, in terms of Tulloch and the Moor, all that's been done has to be done and should be done, and I'm sure it has been done. But this shows one wee thing where more could be done, maybe, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next one in the chamber here is Councillor Keenan.
Yeah, well, I note as previous speakers said that to work as a doctor in the north, you need to be registered with the GMC and obtain a licence. In addition to that, you have to apply to register with the Ireland Medical Performers List, and then you have to do an induction scheme. There does seem to be a lot of red tape around this, as the previous speakers have mentioned, and it is very much in contrast to the experience that patients are having on the island of Ireland. Many patients travel to Dublin, Sligo, Galway for a range of medical treatments nowadays, and very little or no issues. And as we've learned recently, there are even contingency plans in the SWA to cater for neonatal services. for people this side of the border to receive medical in the south. And I do know that many people in Roslay are actually having to go to a doctor just over the border in Monaghan, in Knockathan. So I think it is possible. It is possible to receive medical care from doctors from either side of the border. It's only the red tape and the bureaucracy that is derived from there actually being a border there in the first place that is causing the issue. So in my view, I think this is why we need an all-Ireland health service that's fully funded and free from the cradle to the grave. I also think that now is the time to start connecting those networks within the health service on both sides of the border by streamlining and unifying.
Okay, we're starting to raise
any
other
qualifying
issues over
criteria.
the correspondence here, so we
Yeah.
are.
So just as an action, if members were agreeable, I think we should write to the Department of Health and the HSE to request to look at the legislation and the legal criteria that governs the working requirements, both north and south, and to streamline and unify the requirements that are set out with regards GP eligibility to work in both geographical
Okay,
areas.
that's your time up, Councillor Keenan. I now move back to WebEx and Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. I do want to support members who have spoken in the chamber. And in particular, I want to second Councillor Keenan's proposal that we should write to the Department of Health seeking that the legislation be amended to expedite fully qualified GPs getting on the Northern Ireland performers list, which is a prerequisite to being able to take up practice in Northern Ireland. In her correspondence, Chair, Dr. O'Brien refers to the special relationship that we have with training schemes within the Republic of Ireland and the similarities between the training schemes offered in the Republic of Ireland to those offered in Northern Ireland. And I think it's wholly appropriate that graduates from the Republic of Ireland should be facilitated in moving and working in Northern Ireland, particularly along the border regions. I think given the current recruitment crisis to general practice, we do have to look outside Northern Ireland to fill these spaces, and they are urgently required.
Okay.
And certainly it's something that we should play our part in lobbying for, that there is a change in the regulations and that those changes particular to explore the special relationship between Northern and Southern Ireland be expedited as soon as possible. So
Okay.
thank you for that, Chair.
Okay, Councillor McCann, you still have your hand up. Can you take it down? And
Apologies, Chair.
Councillor McCann. Okay, thank you. Members, you've heard it proposed, first of all, to note the correspondence. Any disagreement in that? No. Secondly, we've had a proposal that we write to the Minister to more or less expedite the changes necessary. We've had it proposed by Councillor Keenan, seconded by Councillor Deehan. Anybody in disagreement with that? Okay, that's passed. Okay, thank you. We'll move on now to page 5. And again, Alison, I think I need to bring you in 512.
Thanks, Chair. Just to highlight to members, we have the correspondence from the Department for Communities. This was in response to the Council's representations regarding relief measures and specifically around rent controls. And we have the response from the Department for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Our speaker is Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We're all, I'm sure every councillor is extremely aware of the crisis that's ongoing with the cost of living for so many households at the moment. And for many who are paying rent, there's an additional pressure which is arising from the fact that landlords are blatantly, increasing the amount of money that they're seeking to charge. The consequences is that that families, households I am aware now are being forced to leave their houses as a result of this sort of gouging by landlords. And we obviously as a council took a very, I think, an ambitious approach, which is the idea of seeking to see what can be done to cap rents and to protect tenants. And here we have a response which is really unambitious. It's actually shameful in the context that there was a proposal made, as we all know, in Stormont to actually reduce rents by 10%. And after a very suspicious situation where no one opposed it, it was passed only for it to be sunk again. And we have the minister here, Minister Hargie, who is basically attempting to suggest that it is sufficient to restrict rent increases to once every 12 months, and that people can wait, tenants can wait for any form of legislative reform to actually to avert further increases from greedy landlords for the next assembly. Meanwhile, an actual concrete proposal to reduce it by 10% this year was rejected. So this is going to do nothing for tenants who are really facing struggle. There are people. I spoke to a mother recently who had to go and live on the sofa of her son. That's the truth. I know another mother with children who does not know what to do because she cannot meet the rent increase that's been demanded of her. There is no protection coming from these people from Stormont that I can see, but. This is a shameful piece. I'm happy to note, but it's a disgrace.
To note, okay. And the next speaker in the chamber, sorry, the one on WebEx, Councillor Curry.
Yes, Gormagada Caherly. First of all, I'd just like to second the noting of the correspondence from the Minister. And just to say, I think that Corrio Coffey just might like to moderate some of his language at times because it's a bit over the top. Minister Hargie has introduced legislation, the Private Tenancies Bill, and that's going to build further on the rent controls that were already brought forward, and it provides very much needed. I appreciate the intent of what Corrio Coffey's saying, but this provides much needed protections for people and families living in the private rented sector. All private renters should have access to high quality affordable homes. It should be warm and energy efficient, and that provides that. There's a number of things included within it. Protects people when it comes to evictions. There's improved health and safety measures for people and families, safe electrics, keeping people safe from carbon monoxide poisoning. And just to be clear, Sinn Féin supports rent control. There have been real results delivered for people and families. And an example of that is in the freezing of the housing executive rents. Now, what Corrio Coffey's speaking about was actually legally unsound, and if it had gone ahead, would have meant that protections would have been lost that were included in the bill, and that wasn't an acceptable outcome.
Okay, can you bring your remarks to a close, please?
Yes, that's all I have to say, Chair Gormagad. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Siobhan, for that. I'd ask members in the chamber here, I don't want to hear whispering or noises between you while the business is being carried out, please. Next one is Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's protect the minister and protect the party at all costs.
Sorry, I don't want any of this.
Chair, we saw.
Going nowhere.
Chair, I'd like to comment if I could.
You can make a comment
the proposal
on what
before us.
Sending correspondence, but I don't want this.
Who's electioneering? Sorry, if you're shouting across, who's electioneering?
Sorry, I'm not. I'm in control of this chamber, and I'm not going to take any nonsense here. If you want to make comment on it, make comment, but I'm not willing to take slagging off of political parties here. We're dealing
Chair,
with
that's unfortunately what needs
Sorry,
to be done.
Councillor McAleer, do not talk over me. If you want to say something, say it now.
Perfect. Yeah, again, the flip-flopping and the two-facedness of the minister shines through here when she talks about supporting rent controls, but urging her party colleagues in Stormont to vote against it. The last speaker talked about the party's support for rent controls. No doubt this is the same way that they support a ban on blood sports. When it comes to a vote on it, they'll actually oppose it. This is, you can't take the shine off this. There was a vote passed in Stormont to reduce rent and to actually put a limit on the rent increases. It passed through the chamber to the embarrassment of the minister and her party colleagues. They then used, and it's disgraceful, Chair, that we can't even discuss this
chamber
now.
here, and I'm going to cut you off here, Councillor McAleer, because the correspondence has been proposed and seconded for noting.
But we're not allowed to
This is
comment on
not going to get into this type of knocking ministers or whatever. It's dealing with the correspondence.
Well, Chair,
Councillor Irvine, briefly, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. I just want to clarify and maybe rectify a comment from Councillor Coffey in regard to private landlords. He used the collective term. I would say that he should use some private landlords, because I have experience of landlords who are more than equitable in regard to tenants' rights.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Irvine. Members, you've heard it proposed and seconded that we note the correspondence. Anybody disapproving, please notify now. Okay, that's passed. So we now are on to page 5, sorry, page 6, page 7, page 8. Celine.
Chair, members, under item 5.2, which was the information on financial matters and the management accounts, I just want to draw attention to, I suppose some of the discussion there was around the estimates process and the fact that operational arrangements were reviewed and efficiencies were considered on an ongoing basis.
Sorry, can I just interrupt a wee sec, please? IT, Chris McCaffrey is waiting in the lobby. Could you please let him in, please? Sorry, Celine.
That's okay. In a recent meeting, members made a decision to continue the hire of equipment, and I need to highlight the fact that we don't currently have resource cover for that in the estimates that have been approved for the 22-23 year, and maybe to give a bit of background and explanation to that. I suppose, given that there had been little or no uptake of this service, when we track back through the information on this, it was actually, this budget line was removed in following 2021 whenever it was not spent. The low level of uptake, the increasing demand on resources to undertake other work in parks and open spaces, and also the fact that there was some other business provision of hiring facilities and that in the locality. So it was going back to that line was effectively removed as an efficiency line, and in order to address that now, I suppose it will take a little bit of time. We will have to wait till we get into the 22-23 budget year, and we will have to seek an in-year environment from some other area in order to do that, because obviously to expend money in an area where we don't have the delegated budget cover would be, I suppose, ultra vires and working outside our delegated authority. So I felt it was just important to highlight that to members.
Okay, thank you, Celine. Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's an interesting comment there, but I'm just wondering why it is that we as a council can find £1.2 million from what we called last night an underspend in revenue budgets at year end 2021-22, which we find ourselves free to provide to like sports clubs and so on for strategic capital projects grant program. But when it comes to other expenditures, we are told we can't find the money. So thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I may respond, Chair, it
Okay,
really
so-
is a matter of financial management discipline. Members will be aware that we have reported the financial position for the current year up to date and up to the 31st of December, and we're projecting the position forward to the end of the year. But equally, we do approach our budgeting processes with the same level of diligence, and I'm just highlighting that in the budget that has been approved, that particular sum hasn't, that resource requirement hasn't been provided for.
Okay, thank you, Celine. We've nothing else on page 8, so we're moving on to page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13. I think Alison, page 13.
Just to draw members' attention to the correspondence received from the Department of Education. This is a response to the Council's request that the development proposal, there be an extension to the timeline for St Eugene's Primary School. So the Minister has responded, advised of the date of the 31st of March, and has also set out the remaining stages of the process. We also have an action, Chair, regarding the scheduling of an informal meeting. We have issued dates to the school, so we're just waiting for their confirmation of those, and we'll be advising members of that as soon as they're received.
Okay, Councillor McAleer.
Yes, Chair. I'll actually
First, the note to
propose the note, yeah, and actually welcome the correspondence that the consultation period that was due to close on the 22nd of February has actually been extended to the 31st of March. So this is within my own DEA. So hopefully it will progress as requested by the school and by the Board of Governors, and fingers crossed on this potential project.
Okay, so
Thank you.
proposed noting. Councillor Clark.
I'll second that, and I want to reiterate my support for St Eugene's. I know Councillor McDuff has done a lot of work on this too. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Members, you've heard it proposed and seconded that we note the correspondence. Any disagreement with that? Okay, thank you. Passed. We move on now to page 14, page 15, and page 16. Okay, members, that's that section dealt with. Sorry, Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, Chair, I was just going back to, I wanted to come in on page 13. I know there was another issue there, but I note the reference on page 13 to the ear syringing, and I note that that's coming out under 8.3 correspondence. Do we wait for it then?
Correspondence.
Okay, in which case is the issue on page 15, which was around the meeting with the utility regulator, and I just want to say that I think it would be very useful to meet with them, but I felt that the meeting with Sony was, it didn't really provide much. We had a meeting recently with the network provider, Sony, and I felt that the information that was provided at that meeting was rather inadequate. There's plans for one further spur to Oma, which we all would know was long planned and may have ulterior motives. But the main issues that I felt that we should have had answers to at that point was around the way in which prices are being set by Sony at the expense of consumers in Northern Ireland. And as a result, the company, which is actually the predominant supplier, ESB, is reported to be making large sums, both through EirGrid, which are through transfer payments, but through the pricing mechanism itself, ESB is making large profits. I believe over the last 10 years, they've made profits of £1.2 billion. And this is the way this is set up. This is set up as a mechanism to really keep prices higher here in Northern Ireland. And I feel none of the answers was given to us from Sony at that meeting on that issue. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we're now on to reports for decision. And item 5, Chief Executive Directorate reports. And 5.1 is to confirm minutes of Health and Social Care Subcommittee held on the 18th of January 2022. It's paper on your papers. And I'm going to go to, I think it's Councillor Stevenson. I'm asking the chair of that subcommittee if he wishes to propose ratification of the minutes and actions. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll be happy to propose the ratification of the minutes.
Okay, thank you. And I'm looking for a seconder of a member of that subcommittee to ratify. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll second the adoption of the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, you've heard it proposed and seconded that we ratify the minutes. Any disagreement, please notify now. Okay, thank you, members. We're moving on to 5.2 to consider a report on Nilga guidance on pre-election period of heightened political sensitivity. That is paper B. And I'll ask the Chief Executive to come in on that.
Chair, thank you. Just briefly, as members will have seen from the report, Nilga have prepared guidance for this period, which is defined as heightened sensitivity in advance of the election. It is non-statutory, but certainly the request and recommendation from Nilga is that the councils would adopt this. So accordingly, Chair, we're recommending the council notes and applies the principles as outlined in the guidance note as far as is reasonably practicable during the period of heightened political sensitivity.
Okay, members, you've heard the report there from Nilga and from the Chief Executive. Can I have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Earl Thompson.
Thank you again, Chair. I formally propose the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Diane Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. I was happy to second the noting.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other further comments? Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, Chair, and just a brief question on it, I suppose, and just kind of aware in the run-up to election and in recent weeks and probably even recent months, the attendance seems to have dropped at council meetings. I'm wondering, is there any provision for the people whose representatives have maybe stopped coming to meetings to promote themselves for the assembly?
Councillor Coffey, you looking in? No. Okay. So members, you've heard it proposed and seconded. Anybody in disagreement, please notify now. Okay, thank you. We move on now to 5.3 to consider a report of the Chief Executive, and that is paper C. Just before, sorry, Councillor Coffey, are you looking back in again?
Yes, Chair. I was just wondering what was, you said, did I have something that I had my hand up or anything?
Sorry, I thought your hand was up there.
No, it wasn't, Chair. No.
Okay. So we're now on paper C, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just a few items in this report for members' consideration and decision. Firstly, in terms of the council and committee meeting arrangements, and you'll be aware that what was in regulation has moved across to guidance. I did have an informal engagement with group leaders, single member parties and independents at the end of February, just to seek views really that would frame this report. And there was a general consensus that in the context of both civic leadership, but recognition that the coronavirus transmission rates in the community remain high, that we should continue on the hybrid meeting arrangements with 2-metre social distancing in place in our chambers, but that we would review these for the annual meeting on the 1st of June, or if the guidance changed in the intervening period. And then we would continue with our subcommittees, working groups and informal meetings on a fully remote basis. In terms of the preparations for the new council mandate, Chair, believe it or not, we're now moving into the final year of this council, and there are some required pieces of work that need to be completed. That would include the future governance arrangements of the new council, the induction and handover arrangements, as well as general election planning. There is also, I think, a need for us to consider our own progress against the corporate commitments that we've set out, most particularly against the corporate plan. And it's suggested to facilitate that we would have a dedicated workshop. And then also included in the report, Chair, is the request for authority to proceed with the payment of the NAC, the National Association of Councillors annual subscription, which will run from April to March. And finally, we want to highlight to you the Nilga Equality and Diversity Training for Councillors. We do have 3 members already nominated, but we would certainly take additional nominations, and we would record that as part of the elected members' training and development programme. So the recommendations there are summarised on page 3, Chair, that in the context of the current guidance, we continue to meet on a hybrid basis with 2-metre social distancing, reviewing for the annual meeting on the 1st of June or earlier if the guidance allows or changes, that members note and approve the preparations and required inputs for the new mandate, supports the organisation of a member workshop for an update on the corporate plan, approves the NAC payment, and then approves members to attend the Nilga Equality and Diversity Training on the 31st of March. But we would take names for that.
Okay, thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Irvine.
Thank you very much, Chair. Happy to propose all the recommendations as noted at point 8 in the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Councillor Paul Robinson.
I second that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Deehan, you wish to come in?
Yes, thank you. I would be interested in attending the Nilga training offered, Chair, if I may, please.
I have been informed that you're already nominated, Councillor Deehan.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, you've heard it proposed and seconded that we follow the recommendations as outlined. Any dissenters to that? Okay, that's passed. Thank you. Can I ask IT to move the sign on the screen? That's better, thank you. Councillor Deehan, your hand's still up, please. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is 6.1, to consider a report on consultations, paper D. Before we go into this, and I ask Celine to lead on it, what we'll do is we'll take each of the consultations in order and clear each in line, and then we'll move on to the ones for notation. Can I thank members that some advice has been taken and that members have consulted with the director prior to the meeting tonight. I'm pleased to see that that is now taking place, and that is the correct procedure, and we don't have to waste a lot of time at the meetings with regard to it. So I thank those that did participate in that consultation to our own director. Celine?
Thank you, Chair. May I start just by acknowledging the work of Louise Horner, who's our newly appointed head in the area of policy, and the policy team, who have been busy on a number of fronts in relation to the documentation in front of you and other related ongoing work. So just for clarity, there are 2 copies of the consultation responses for the 3 consultations that we have in front of us tonight. The original version was posted last Friday whenever the papers were originally presented, and as the Chair has explained, I have received some additional feedback, and version 2 incorporates that feedback has been considered and then incorporates further commentary and data where appropriate. So I think it's best if we can refer to and work off version 2. So there are 3 consultation responses here for you, and as the Chair said, he wishes to consider each one in turn. The first one is a consultation on children and young people's strategy delivery plan, and that has been undertaken by the Department for Education. The Council's response, which is set out in Appendix 1, includes comments on the proposed outcomes, the need to improve access to affordable childcare, particularly in rural communities, the need to address educational inequalities at a local level, the need to enable a good transition from education into employment, and the need to prioritise some areas of greatest focus given the very substantial number of actions that are proposed in the delivery plan. So if I pause there, the first recommendation is that the response version 2 is approved.
Okay, members, you've heard Celine there, and we're looking at just simply the consultation of the Children and Young Persons Strategy Delivery Plan 2021 to 24. And the first speaker I have is Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, and happy to propose the acceptance of the amended version, and my thanks to Celine and the team for incorporating any changes I'd suggested. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coffey. Councillor Michael Duff.
Yep, Chair, thank you. Within the neighbourhood renewal, and I know this is a subject exercising the minds of Councillor Deehan and Councillor Fitzgerald as well, or I've spoken to both about this. The transition, enabling the best transition into employment is good, but an area that needs great focus and just seek reassurance that it could be included or is included is transition from primary school to post-primary school. It's deemed to be very traumatic for parents, for children, and it's identified as a major issue. And there's a local survey being undertaken at the request of principals, as to the impact on transition from primary to post-primary. So I think if a section was included about that as well, in relation to helping to improve education attainment levels, that would be helpful as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Celine, are you happy?
Yes, that can be incorporated into probably similar section there, just around, I suppose, educational inequalities.
Councillor Coffey, are you willing to bring that into your proposal, what the seconder has provided there? Councillor Coffey?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to do that. Yep.
Okay, members, you've heard it proposed and seconded that we accept the paper with that minor addition there, that, I shouldn't say minor addition, small addition that Councillor Coffey and Michael Duff have brought forward. Anybody in disagreement, please notify now. Okay, that's passed. Celine, can I ask you to move on to the second consultation?
At Appendix 2, Chair, and detailed at 2.2 is the Council's draft response to the options paper on inconsiderate pavement parking, which has been produced by the Department for Infrastructure. Members will note that there's a series of consultation questions in relation to this, and some limited scope to comment further. The basis of the Council's response has been engagement with our access advisory groups. We have 2 access advisory groups, I suppose one based in each of the main towns, and we've taken on board their comments in particular around the issue of inconsiderate pavement parking. And I suppose in terms of a preferred solution, the suggestion is a combination of options 2 and 3. And other views expressed by the group members were the difficulties experienced by people with disabilities when encountering a vehicle parked on a pavement, the potential damage to equipment that disabled individuals rely on, and the need to raise awareness on this issue in schools and again in as many different ways as possible, so that this message and awareness is highlighted. So that the recommendation there is that the consultation response is approved for submission.
Okay, Councillor McAleer.
Yes, Chair, and thank Celine for the report and for the summation there. I think the fact that the advisory groups and the accessibility groups have been consulted on this is of huge importance, because I know it's an issue that Dermot Devlin, amongst others, have mentioned and brought up with us on a number of occasions in working on the disability advisory group. So mindful of that and the inclusion of obviously the obstacles presented to people with disabilities and also families with pushchairs as well. I'm very happy to support the second or the amended version.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you. We're next one then, WebEx, Councillor Baird.
Thank you, Chair. My comment's more a legal point. The option 2 was to introduce an outright ban on pavements, possibly with some exceptions. The difficulty I see there, if you have an outright ban, if you look at the Oxford Dictionary definition of outright, it's wholly or complete. Therefore, if you have an outright ban, you can't have any exceptions. Now, maybe if you just drop the outright, introduce a ban on pavement parking, possibly with some exceptions, that would get you through. But it's a contradiction in terms to have an outright ban with exceptions to it. Happy enough to second the proposal to adopt, but I think that should be taken into account. I wouldn't want a legal challenge on it at a later date.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Baird. I'm going to actually come back to Councillor McAleer. Are you quite happy with that slight alteration?
That's grammatically correct, I suppose, so happy enough with that, yeah.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
Chair, just for clarity, we haven't, those options have been proposed by the Department for Infrastructure. That's their language, as it's not something that the council has described as such. And I think actually that is why our access advisory groups are saying that, well, option 2, an outright ban, has some exceptions. They actually felt a mix of option 2 and 3. Option 3 being to introduce powers that would allow traffic attendants to enforce against vehicles. So perhaps there is just confusion in the options as presented in the consultation paper, but I think our response reflects that as well.
Okay, thank you, Celine. Next speaker is Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm very happy to support the change, and I think that Councillor Baird is clearly correct, and I think he spotted something there that's quite that's the nub of the issue, really. The one thing I would suggest is that I'm glad the paragraph's been included, recognising the that it's there are some, for example, cul-de-sacs, even in social housing, my own housing estate, where if you have 2 vehicles parked, you won't get a third one up between them without moving, and that can cause a lot of trouble if people aren't there and so on. So I'm glad that there is some provision for that, because unfortunately, the size of cars seems to have expanded or whatever to the point that things that would have worked in the past don't any longer. So I'm just happy to support that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McElduff.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased also to see sight loss recognised there, because it's a real burden for people who have visual impairment or sight loss, you know, to be inconvenienced by inconsiderate parking. And I just thought, I always meant to do this, we should maybe spot some positives. You know, on the Brookmount Road in Omagh, I was pleased to note that the Centra shop there owners, that they acquired additional car parking space elsewhere on the Brookmount Road, you know, encouraging people to park there, even though there's a little bit of walking involved. But I think, I could be wrong, but I think that was a direct response to the problem of inconsiderate parking on footpaths, based on communication I had with a local lady who suffers sight loss and who highlighted the issue, you know. So whenever the issue was addressed, you know, one of the net outcomes was that the Centra shop, people there at the Brookmount Road, they went off and acquired new land for car parking. So I thought that was a very robust response to the problem, you know, and we don't often commend people who do things like that in the private sector, for example. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McElduff. Members, we've heard it proposed by Councillor McAleer and seconded by Councillor Baird that we accept the recommended response. Anybody in disagreement with that, please notify now. Okay, that's passed. Celine, we'll now move on to the third one.
Chair, members, so the third item is around the public consultation on the Northern Ireland fire and rescue structures. And the response proposed is at Appendix 3. The feedback is in relation to 3 areas: realignment of the district structures, quality of rural needs implications, and then the proposal for a single district commander for each district with responsibility for development of local community risk management plans. The summary of the draft response, as set out there, highlights potential for improved collaboration and partnership working. The Council's position that on the need to protect and fire and rescue resources within the district, and that relates to staff and fire stations within rural areas, and also then full-time provision in the main county towns of Enniskillen and Omagh. and also highlighting the need for a direct link between Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service and the Council for in relation to emergency planning work, which is already established and is just where we would wish to maintain that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Celine. First speaker I have is Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I just want to start off with proposing the adoption of this as it's constituted, and also thanking Celine and her team for accepting the proposed change around the specific provision and requirement for full-time provision of fire service in the main county towns, including Enniskillen, which is an issue I know, Chair, you will share. I do note that we had met with Mark Smith on this, and he had committed at that stage that we would then meet with Mark Deeney, or he didn't commit that we'd meet Mark Deeney, but we eventually found out his replacement was Mark Deeney, and that we would hope to have met Mark Deeney ahead of the submission of this. I also note that we had we didn't, but the community partnership had a presentation from a community planning partnership from Mark Deeney. Unfortunately, that excluded many of us. So I'm wondering, in particular, I noted in the newspaper last week, in regard to the very specific issue of a full-time provision in Enniskillen, they made a commitment now, it seems, that they will return the service. This is not more than they'd ever done before, which I would welcome. But we need now to see a timeline for it, because there's a lot of uncertainty around the timeline, and also the nature of the commitment that they've made. So I would like to propose, as well as proposing this for adoption, that we would actually write to Mark Deeney with specific remit on the full-time provision in Enniskillen of a response team. There's a very well-made point in our submission around the time frame now it's taken to respond to accidents as a result of not having that. It took 19 minutes to get to a fire in Enniskillen in our area, which was a serious fire. So I'd like to propose we bring him in and at least investigate and find out the time frame and the nature of the commitment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coffey. The next speaker I have here is Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much again, Chair. And like Councillor Coffey, I'd like to commend Celine and the team for bringing this together. It is true to say at the Community Planning Strategic Partnership Board, we did have a briefing from Mark Deeney, which was quite comprehensive, although his, I suppose his link on the day had gone down slightly. So it would be beneficial to have him come in, or to give us another full briefing for all councillors if that is required. So I'm happy to second both Councillor Coffey's proposals as is. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Members, we've had it proposed and seconded. First of all, the consultation response, and secondly, the request from Councillor Coffey that Mark Deeney again meets with regard to the Enniskillen. Do we have anybody against the proposal? No,
Chair,
thanks.
if I may just clarify, I know that there is ongoing liaison between Mark Deeney, the fire service, and the council to arrange that meeting. We were trying to get it arranged in advance of the date of the 28th, but we felt we were still in a position that we'd done enough work on the response to bring it before you regardless, and we still do hope and anticipate that the meeting that was already requested will take place, if not before the 28th of March, certainly very, very early in April time. So it has just proved a little bit problematic to get that date sorted out, but I know it's very active and live, so I'm not sure that we need the second part of the proposal, but we could perhaps make sure that the issue of the Enniskillen resourcing is flagged as an item for discussion in that respect.
Okay, well, Councillor Coffey, I think we'll keep it, but we'll keep it as informal as what Celine has suggested. Are you agreed, Councillor Thompson, as well? Yeah, okay. So members, no disagreement with that, and we've had all the speakers on it. Okay, so we have now the three consultations through, and we now move to recommendation 9.2. I'll ask Celine to explain the second part of the recommendation for noting.
So, Chair, the information section of this report just gives you, for, I suppose, to complete the loop on the consultations that have been submitted, highlighting then a number of other consultations that are have been released and that are open. Again, as before, all the information can be accessed by a direct link on the title of the item, the agenda item there, the paper item. And we will be liaising with other services and highlighting those where appropriate for any further comment. But we would encourage members and indeed parties to make responses. Just, I suppose, in conclusion, to highlight that the focus of work at the moment is a drafting of a response on the Invest NI Infrastructure 2050 strategy document. So again, we would welcome members' comments on that. That will come forward to the next meeting. And for May, there is an open consultation at the moment on the reform of adult social care, which again is an area of particular interest to the Council. So those are two that we're certainly looking at in more detail, and we'll be drafting a formal corporate response on those two.
Okay, thank you, Celine.
So,
obviously, more that you mentioned several that will be coming before the next couple of
yes, that's just to highlight that again for information
Okay,
for members.
I'm looking for somebody to propose noting of 9.2. That's recommendation 9.2 in full. Councillor O'Coffey.
I propose to note.
Opposed. And Councillor McAleer, you're next.
Yeah, Chair, happy enough to second that, and just to state there's a number of very interesting consultations coming up there, including I think the last two that have particularly caught my eye, the one in relation to the renewables and the Human Rights Commission then at the end there. So yeah, definitely very interesting stuff.
Okay, we've had it proposed and seconded. We note those recommendations. Anybody in disagreement? Okay, that's passed. Again, members, for future consultations, it is useful if you have comments to put them in advance. So I thank councillors that have alerted Celine in advance, and it certainly makes it much easier when we come to the meetings, and there's a better chance of them taken on board in the draft from the council. Thank you. We now move on to item 6.2 to consider report on procurement and tender update at paper E. And again, that's Celine.
Chair, members, monthly procurement report, which has two items for decision making. One, a tender to be issued for installation of cycle stands across the district, a fully funded project. The second, then, two contracts that we are proposing to extend. At section 3 is information on two tenders that have been awarded during the period, and the recommendations are as at section 9 for approval and for noting.
Okay, members, Councillor O'Coffey.
Councillor Donnelly.
Sorry, I didn't. Sorry, Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly. Sorry.
Problem, Chair. I'm happy to propose the recommendations, and I'd like to welcome the installation of cycle stands across the district. I think is welcomed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Sorry about that. There's flashing lights everywhere here, so thank you. Then we have a seconder, Councillor Mary Garty.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to second that recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member, you heard proposed and seconded. We accept those recommendations. Anybody in disagreement, please notify now. Okay, that's passed. We next move on to item 6.3. This is to consider a report on staff matters, paper F. Celine?
Chair, members, so we have a number of items here for decision making, the one item really, which is the Local Government Staff Commission contribution. But in relation to the items for information, I have a further update around the pay update for 2021 as detailed there for you. And you will note at 3.2.3 that that the council had been informed by Unite, the union, that that they were taking industrial action ballot.
Hold you there, Celine.
Yeah.
Have you declared an interest in this, Councillor Coffey? Could I ask you to leave the chamber, please? We'll give you a shout as soon as this item is addressed. Sorry, Celine, can you carry on?
Sorry, just bear with me. I'm just getting my notes here as well. So we first received notification from Unite on the 16th of December that they were in dispute with the council on the 21-22 pay. It was notified as a trade dispute in respect of the 21-22 pay for all workers whose pay was based on or linked to pay awards made by the National Joint Council for Local Government Services, the Joint Negotiating Committee for Local Authority Craft and Associated Employees, and the Joint Negotiating Committee for Youth and Community Workers. Most of our staff would be on the first of those schemes. All the employees, we don't employ anyone in the other two categories. Following on from that, on the 17th of January, Unite informed the council they were balloting their members for industrial action in relation to the trade dispute on the 21-22 pay. The result of the ballot was issued on the 24th of January, and that indicated that 68 members responded, with 64 voting in favour of strike and 63 in favour of action short of strike. According to our records, there are currently 116 employees who are members of Unite. Agreement was subsequently reached through the Local Government Services Pay on a collective agreement on the 28th of February, and a copy of the formal pay agreement is included in the papers that are appended to this paper. On the 7th of March, the regional official of Unite advised the council that the union intended to commence strike action on Monday, the 21st of March, and we believe that this action is planned for the duration of 1 week, but we haven't yet received formal notice of the strike. Council has liaised with other councils who have received similar communications, and we are awaiting a legal opinion as to whether the proposed strike would be legal. Due to the matter in dispute having been resolved by a collective agreement and therefore no longer in dispute, and also the fact that the landscape in which the ballot took place has changed, i.e. there has now been agreement on the 21-22 pay, and therefore the outcome of the ballot could be different if it was conducted now. That aside, the council has no ability to negotiate pay. We are part of the national local government pay arrangements, but we have scheduled an informal meeting with Unite to hear their concerns and their issues and see if there is scope to resolve the matters without the need for industrial action. But it would be, I suppose, appropriate to advise members that there is a likelihood, or a significant likelihood, that industrial action could take place on the 21st of March, or indeed the week of the 21st of March.
Okay, thank you, Celine.
That's a further update on item 3.2. And then we immediately at 3.3 are already negotiating on the 2022 pay settlement, and there is a briefing there on the 23rd of March, and the chair and at least one other senior officer can attend the briefing. There's then further information there on employer contribution rates for the various pension schemes and the ranges that have changed slightly. So the recommendations are that the council approves the contribution for the Local Government Staff Commission for 22-23, notes the COVID update, the pay update, including the verbal update that I've provided, the regional pay briefing for 2022, and then the employee contribution rate bands and rates for Nilga and also the civil service pension scheme.
Okay, thanks, Celine. The first person in here is Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I suppose it was the section, particularly in relation to the pay update and the subsequent information we've been provided in terms of the trade union members of Unite, that is quite concerning. I think the fact that we are facing down the barrel of the gun of industrial action, that obviously that could impact on services such as refuse collection, is going to be something that's a major concern. Given the figures that were stated there, albeit they were earlier this year, you're looking at, just from quick calculation, about 94% of the workers or the members who did respond in favour of strike action. I think that's obviously a very strong message coming from our workers. I don't like to see these kind of disputes. I like to think we're a good employer, and I'll urge, I know the directors mentioned there an informal meeting with the representatives of Unite. I would urge that we do meet and that we do try and resolve this, because the last thing we want to see is our workers out on strike. I've been out this week again with the education welfare officers who are currently on strike. We're aware that the UCU workers are out on strike. It just is it's not a good look whenever our workers are finding an issue with that. And I note that the pay offer was accepted by two other trade unions, although on the proviso that the deal wasn't in any way reflective of the incredible work that our members do, and that was the GMB union said that. And again, Unison also said that the focus would be on achieving a more substantial pay rise in 22-23, because the pay offer isn't as much as it should be, and there's no hiding that. It falls well short of what council and school employees need to keep, what they need to keep up with rising prices. So given the economic hardships that everybody in our district is facing, I think it's vitally important that we get this resolved, and we work with our workers to do so, and our trade unions to do so.
Okay, Councillor McAleer, before you leave there, are you supporting the recommendation approving the continuing operations of the Local Government Staff Commission, and are you noting the other items on the recommendations?
Sorry, Chair, no, I just want to pass that comment. I'll not vote or not make a recommendation at this time.
You're not making any. Okay, thank you. Councillor Irvine.
Thank you, Chair. On the other hand, I'm happy to propose the recommendations at item 9, both of them. That's 9.1 and 9.2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the next one on WebEx, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. I'll second the proposals as proposed by Councillor Irvine. Just seeking a little bit of clarity there. Councillor McAleer referred to something like 94%. I take it that's only 94% of the members of Unite, as not all. I'm sure not all the employees are members of Unite. And the second thing is, because we have no powers of negotiation, if Unite in general vote to go out and strike, but our employees do not, would they be expected then to go on strike with the union even if they were happy with their circumstances? And that's just for my own clarity and for the public as well.
Okay, but you're happy to second the recommendations, but clarification on that issue, is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Just to clarify, Chair, the numbers are 94% of those who voted, which in terms of the numbers here represented 64 staff who voted for strike action out of 68 who responded. That's out of 116 employees who are a member of Unite, as far as we are aware, according to the records that the council holds, and that would correspond to just, well, between 10 and 15% of our workforce at any point in time. Our workforce can vary. Obviously, we have seasonal staff who are involved in different areas of work, community summer schemes, tourist attractions, etc. At a peak, we would have approximately 1,000 staff, but that would then at different times of the year be down sort of below 900 as well. So the Unite membership that we're aware of is 116 employees, and 64 of those voted in favour of strike action.
Okay, Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, it's just the other regarding the rules of the union. Would if Unite across the board votes for strike, but the ones who work for us don't, as we have no negotiating rights, would then they be expected to go out and strike? Obviously, being union members.
Yeah, Chair, I think that will be a matter of personal choice in respect of any strike action, and even, you know, for members, whether it's local or regional, in whatever way. I suppose it really is up to members, individual staff members who are members of a union, what they decide to do.
Okay. The last speaker in this is Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there does seem to be a wee bit of confusion around.
Keenan, could you bring your mic down a wee bit? It's hard to hear you, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there seems to be a wee bit of confusion around the strike. 94% voted that 94% that did vote voted for it. That's fairly strong. And 116 members or employees are members of Unite. Usually in them situations, most all the members would strike. That isn't part of that union, but if they did, the 116 members striked, what effect of the services would we foresee if there was a strike? You know.
Okay, well, that's Celine or
I
Alison, sorry.
suppose, Chair, until first of all has been noted, we haven't received the official notification, but I mean, the areas most likely to be affected would be our refuse services, potentially our leisure services. And I would think if those numbers certainly strike, or chose to strike, we would be looking at significant disruption for a week, potentially, or up to a week, which would mean in the context of refuse, people would certainly miss a week's collection, and there wouldn't be replacement. It would just be picked up at their next available collection. But it's difficult to plan until we actually get the formal notifications, and we'd work through the detail accordingly.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Keenan.
Just on that note, maybe what I would like to say is that I definitely support Emmett's approach to maybe meet as soon as possible, and
that's planned.
Right.
That is planned.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Members, we've heard it proposed by Councillor Irvine, seconded by Councillor McLaughlin, that we accept the recommendations and noting as is. Everybody in agreement? Okay, no dissenters. It's passed. Could we get Councillor O'Coffey back into the chamber, please? Is Councillor Irvine doing that? Oh, there he is. Yeah. Okay, members, we're moving on now to 6.4 to consider a report of the Director of Corporate Service and Governance, paper G. Again, that's Alison.
Chair.
Sorry, Celine, sorry.
Chair, two members or two items in this paper for you members to consider for decision making, and then some information on financial matters there. I'll cover it off first and maybe work my way back. Information on the district rate. Some requested information about the costs and details of remote and hybrid meetings. And then just to draw your attention to the requirement for declarations in respect of related parties and members' interests that will be required for our end of year financial statements. Those are the matters for information. The matters for decision making then is an update to the Constitution for a new piece of legislation or an updated piece of legislation, and then the establishment of an elected member working group, if required, around boycott, divestment, sanctions, following on from the Special Policy and Resources meeting of the 31st of January. The information at 2.1.3 has now been superseded by members' decision last night to appoint a 20-member committee in relation to capital. That does mean that positions 55 to 74 of the DeHunt calculations have been used, and therefore we move from position 75 onwards, if indeed we do use the DeHunt calculations, because the first premise for any such working group would be by agreement, if possible. So that is the key matters for decision making and for information, Chair.
Okay, members, I think we'll have some discussion on this. So I'm going to take the first recommendation, the process for nominations to the elected member working group to progress the work of the council in respect to BDS and nominates members of the working group accordingly. The first speaker I have is Siobhan Curry. Councillor Curry.
Yes, Gormagada Cairley. and I was the person who had proposed that we set up a working group on this campaign. But having reflected on this and just in light of the meeting that we had last week, I think it was, with the European Legal Support Centre, it was a very valuable meeting, Chair, and they indicated their willingness to work with us. And I think just to maximise the benefits of their advice, I think actually a workshop arrangement would actually maybe suit us better in this case. Those workshops being open to all interested councillors, and indeed, as they've indicated, they would be keen to work with us to the ELSC as well. And maybe, Chair, if we went with that in the first instance and then revisit maybe the need for a working group, if that's needed, we could look at that later on. We would be reporting back to this committee anyway, and I think this would allow us to work more efficiently to explore how our already, it has to be said, already very good procurement policy, which does have good social value clauses contained within it, how that could incorporate the human rights protections that we would like to see, and that is what we've been looking for, you know, through this campaign, Chair. So just to make that proposal that we actually move to workshops rather than a working group that would be open to all interested members, Chair.
So you're making that a proposal that we actually make it open to workshops rather than a working group?
Yes, yeah, that would report back to the PNR committee, Chair, and then revisit the need maybe at a later stage. It may not be required, Chair. I think actually, having heard what we've heard, we could actually do quite a bit quite quickly in the workshops, Chair, and achieve the same outcome.
Okay, we haven't had a formal decision made to set up this working group, have we?
Chair,
I'll bring in the Chief Executive, please. Sorry.
No, sorry, Chair. We had a couple of actions that essentially flowed from the special committee meeting, Special Policy and Resources Committee on the 31st of January, and the establishment of the working group was one of those. It was the third element, but I think what Councillor Curry's proposal is almost deferring that element, that we would proceed with workshops in the first instance and then revisit the requirement if that would be needed further down the line. So that we have I don't think there's no inconsistency between what's being proposed this evening and the resolved position.
Okay, that's fine, Councillor Curry, just checking on that. So that's your proposal. Next one to speak is Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm quite happy to second that proposal, and I thank Councillor Curry for bringing it forward. We had a very constructive meeting on Friday there with the LSC, and in the course of that and following on from that, we had some constructive discussion about proceeding forward. And I think what we want to do is be as inclusive as possible in the work that we do. And I think through including members who are interested or have an interest in this procedure, and also through including the group that we spoke to on Friday, that's the best way forward in relation to this. I think, as Councillor Curry rightly says, it's a very exciting, very promising bit of work that we're proposing to undertake here. And I look forward to seeing it through. And I know from speaking to, again, the group that we spoke to on Friday, they're very excited and very interested and very keen to get involved. They think this could be quite an important piece of legislation or action that we're actually taking here, and it's something that could be replicated to the benefit of all. So very happy to second that, and hopefully
okay, so you're seconding Councillor Curry's proposal. Councillor Irvine?
Yeah, it's really a procedural matter, and I suppose I'll refer back to the Chief Executive. I know we have an additional proposal coming forward, and I think it's quite a sensible proposal. Do we need a rescinding motion to actually take back the other one, or do we need a notion here to actually postpone the implementation of the decision taken at the special P&R meeting? I mean, I'm only talking about procedure, and I want to make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's.
Executive?
No, thank you, Chair. Chair, no, I don't think so at this stage because there was no time indicated on the establishment of the working group. So, I mean, I think what was apparent from the informal meeting, as has been referenced in a couple of the members' comments, is that we're actually in quite a strong position in terms of our existing procurement arrangements, and it may be that the proposed route would actually facilitate a relatively quick progression in the event that it was determined by the council that we no longer needed our working group. Then I think at the appropriate time we could rescind, but I don't think it's required at this stage.
Just for clarity, and I'd ask the chair, through the chair, to refer back to Councillor Curry. In her proposal really for workshops, did she include the postponement of the implementation of the working group and set up a series of workshops to work through, and then carry through, if so required, the setting up of a working group? Maybe if that proposal was amended, that may cross everything and tie it up.
Chair, you may wish to invite the proposer, but that is certainly my interpretation, that we would proceed with workshops in the first instance, and that may supersede the requirement for a working group.
That's
my
okay, as long
interpretation.
as you're clear and everybody else is clear. I'm happy enough then. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to come back, Councillor Curry. Your hand's still up, but I just wanted to clarify that point. That was your intention, I assume?
Yes, Chair, sorry if I wasn't more clear. I did say just in the first instance, if we go for workshops and if we needed to look at the working group, we would in due course, but we may not need to, but just to take that as it comes, Chair, so that's the intention.
Okay,
Yes.
so it's put in the beds for the meantime, so it is until workshops. Members, I'm not seeing any other speakers. I'm taking there's general consensus on the proposal. So I'm asking if anybody is against what has been proposed by Councillor Curry, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Anybody against that? Nobody against that, so that's passed. So that's the first part of the approval. The second part of the council approval for the two is the update to the scheme of delegation to include the licensing and registration of Clubs Amendment Act Northern Ireland 2021 legislation. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for that, please? Councillor O'Coffey?
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy to propose that. Is this include the, because there was a table there referencing the savings that we'd made by the remote meetings? Do I
No,
get
sorry, this is purely for approval. I'm looking at this here.
All right.
Are you happy to propose?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and Councillor Irvine?
I'm happy to second the proposal from Councillor O'Coffey.
Okay, thank you. Members, we're looking at that, the approval of the scheme of delegation to include the licensing. Anybody in disagreement? Okay, that's passed. We're now moving on to the notation, which is what I think Councillor O'Coffey was coming in, and that is that the council notes the district rate information for Northern Ireland Councils 2022 to 23, and the direct saving.
I think that the figures in the table, I think it's table 1 and 2, which highlight the number of meetings that we've had remotely, but also highlight the very significant sums that have effectively been saved as a result of that. I think we need we've made a decision that nothing should really change before June. There is still some uncertainty with the BA2 subvariant of Omicron, causing quite a lot of concern at the moment. I think it is wise that I think we leave it open, but regardless, we should definitely look, I think, to see whether some of the informal meetings certainly can be conducted remotely. I think there's a gain to that. There's an environmental, but also it takes a bit of pressure off people and makes people able to go to meetings. Maybe they would avoid, not avoid, but maybe avoid would be good as well. But they would be unable to make in any case. Otherwise, rather, and the scale of what's been saved, like 65, 61. Somewhere around 20 odd in the first year. That's not insignificant, and that's the annualized basis. So I'm wondering whether we can look at what type of meetings could be held in a remote fashion going into the future, because the benefits would accrue would be both to the ratepayer, but to the environment and to ourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Chief Executive, is this, I'm sorry, Celine, is it?
Happy to defer to Alison. I suppose firstly, we need to look at the legislation and what the legislation allows us to do in terms of meetings. And I know there was some aspects of that were coming to an end, but hopefully there was the consultation that was mentioned previously. And again, it's maybe something that could be picked up in terms of the work on for the mandate going forward. And incorporated there, and certainly some guidelines or protocols would be useful.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Green.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think what Councillor Coffey said there maybe has some substance. It's a case. I do believe it's essential that we get back into the chamber for our full council and our committee meetings, but a lot of the other meetings could be done remotely, and if that could be done, I think that's the way to go. But I do think for just for the benefit of the council, I do think face-to-face meetings in the full council and committees are essential, because I realise the remote meetings has worked to a certain extent, but I think a lot of the problems that we have had over the last 2 years comes from the fact that we're actually all not in the chamber together. So I think if that could be looked at, it would be interesting, and I think it would be the way to go, but that's just my opinion.
You're happy to note
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next person we have then is Councillor Irvine.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'd just like to thank Celine for the breakdown. I believe I was the one that asked for it to actually come forward. I note the capital investment that we've put into remote meetings and the technology, and also the additionality in regard to the staff. I think the previous two speakers, Councillors Green and Councillor Coffey, are quite right. I believe we need, within regard to the council and the committees, to get back to face-to-face meetings. But I think the decision to put that off until the AGM is a correct one, given the current medical situation in regard to the variant around COVID-19. I believe there's an additional benefit that possibly wasn't referred to in some of the smaller meetings, in that not only do we save on carbon footprint, but we save really on people's time as well. Not only is the cost save in physical travelling, but there's also a cost save in the time. But we should be aware that if we are going forward into the next year and maybe into the further mandate, that we don't program too many virtual meetings, because we could end up, as seen from remote working throughout the period of the pandemic, that people, if they're at home, tend to do too much, maybe not a little. And we have to be aware of health and safety in regard to our officers and our councillors. So I think there's a balance to be struck, and it is good and useful to see the actual savings and the cost involved. So thank you very much again, and I support the proposal. Thank you.
And Councillor Deehan, next speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Chair, for me personally, the remote meetings were very, very good. And, you know, particularly from two perspectives. Number one is the safety aspect of it, that one can work from the relative safety of one's own home or workplace, and still be able to participate fully in the meetings. So the safety issue is important, and I think the point that Councillor O'Coffey makes regarding the BA2 subvariant of Omicron is well made, and certainly initial reports suggest that it is very highly transmissible. And I know overall restrictions are being relaxed or removed completely, but I think it would serve us well to be very cautious. I think also the point that Councillor Irvine makes in terms of the time commitment. So if you, well, in my own personal circumstances, if it takes, well, we'll say an hour to get from Omagh to Enniskillen, by the time you get parked and all of that, and then another 50 minutes to get home, it's a considerable extension of your working day. So I think the remote meetings have worked extremely well. And then there are considerable cost savings to be made. We have already invested in technology within our two main council sites, and I think that we should capitalise on that investment. Yes, I think there is an argument to be made regarding having our main committee meetings face to face, but we're still faced with the issue of social distancing, and I think we would scrap that requirement or that guidance at our peril. So there's that issue to be considered as well. The cost savings are significant, and I don't think we should dismiss those lightly. But certainly any group meetings or informal meetings, I think that we should continue to be able to access those remotely. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And the last speaker I'm going to bring, I have hands still up from Councillor Green, Councillor Deacon, if those could be taken down, and from the chamber here, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair, once again. I think I said at the outset of all of this process, I suppose remote meetings, to me, were a stopgap. And we had to do it when we had to do it. With regard to our council meeting, our full council, I'm in agreement with Councillor Green in this, our full council meeting and our main committees, statutory committees, should be in person when we can get to go ahead to do that. And I know we're talking about restrictions have been lifted, but we're still with guidance. And the social distancing guidance, I don't know where we're going to go with that, because it's still in guidance and it's still 2 metres. With regard to staff, chief executive, directors, officers and staff all, there's a lot of those meetings are done virtually, and quite rightly so. That cuts down a lot on the travelling and unnecessary burden of travelling around the country for no particular reason. So I would be happy enough for those meetings to be continued in a virtual way. But I think, again, I go back to the point that our full council meetings and our statutory committees should be in person when it is deemed safe to do so. We have 2 chambers in the Grange Omagh and in the Town Hall in Enniskillen, and they are catered for 40 people, 40 councillors plus officers. So to me, it's a no-brainer. We get back into what we're supposed to be doing and keep it formalised when we can do so. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. This is for notation. And I've had a proposal from Councillor Green and a seconder from Councillor Irvine that we note these reports. Anybody in disagreement, please notify now. Okay, that's passed. The next item is these are for information, and we go to 7.1 to note report on the update of the Climate Change and Sustainable Development Action Plan 2021 to 2024, paper H, and that is Celine.
Chair, members, so it's almost 6 months since the Climate Change and Sustainable Development Action Plan was approved, and we have been working in relation to the 41 actions that are set out in that plan in a number of ways across the council. So the purpose of this paper is really to provide you with an update and to highlight just some of the key areas of work that's been going on. There's 6 different areas covered in our action plan, 6 key areas. Those are energy and buildings, resource management, transport, land use, economy and governance. So suffice to say there is work ongoing at service level in all strands. We've appointed our lead climate change and sustainable development officer, who is Marcella Kinsella, and she has been then coordinating work, I suppose, in the governance field, but also then starting work in economy and transport actions as well, but also having an oversight role and trying to join up various different aspects of the council's plans and actions in this area. So at Section 2.2, we've highlighted then the work that's been done with our community planning partners, the engagement workshops that we have there. And this is really focused at trying to get wider involvement and wider engagement of all our partners. And I suppose where we're at there is asking them to adopt aspects of our strategy document where it's appropriate to them. And we're also trying to get them to take the lead on key areas and try to ensure that our work here is coordinated. We're also upskilling our staff and indeed our elected members, and you have information there on the carbon literacy programme. We are in the process of developing a website that will be a go-to place for information for people across our district and indeed beyond, linking into other very useful sources of information that are already there around calculating your carbon footprint and actions that you can take to address that. So in that respect, we have developed some branding there that, again, I imagine that you will start to see as part of our awareness programme, first of all, leading into the development of a more formalised education programme. We have done some work with Queen's University Belfast around the launch of an event here in the district. And it's a very, I suppose, it's an innovative suggestion around establishment of cooperatives to seek to address climate change. And I think this is very important and relevant because it does incorporate, for example, the agriculture sector as well as industry, who would be heavy energy users, and then looking to see how we would manage the carbon output and how we can manage that in a sustainable way. So early days on that, but we would like to think that there was a good appetite for some further development in that area. We are progressing our fair trade status renewal. And then in the area of transport, we've a number of strands going around promoting EV charging facilities across the district, and also looking at how we can again look at greening our fleet more so, and starting to explore and research the options there. Members will be aware of the work of the Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan currently out for consultation. The tree planting initiative that is part of our performance improvement. And then I suppose the real downside of climate change is the work in emergency planning that's required to support where there are serious weather events in the district, such as the flooding in February. The hard work then as well behind the scenes is around energy efficiency, working on the data, trying to refine the data so that we can better manage our energy usage. We are looking as part of our capital programme at a long list and short list of capital projects targeted around energy efficiency and reducing carbon emissions. We've launched our a campaign in waste around clean, dry, empty, flat to improve the quality of recyclable materials and also to increase awareness generally of recycling. So this is, members, really for noting, as highlighted there, and providing an update on the work to date. And ultimately, this work will pass over to the Environmental Services Committee. It's timely, the report today, which coincides with the passing of the climate change bill in the Assembly. But I think, again, it is an area that the Council's good intention and good work is starting to bear some fruits, and I hope you can see that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Celine, for that extensive report there. First one on WebEx, Councillor McCaffrey.
Garmagat to Carly, thank you, Chair, and thank you for that report. I'm happy to note the report and would just like to take this opportunity to praise our staff for their efforts in this sector. As we know, climate change presents urgent challenges and urgent crisis that we need to deal with, and it is great to see the Council leading in so many aspects towards this. So I'd be very complimentary of the report and the efforts of all of our staff. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McCaffrey. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second this. It is you can already see positive outcomes arising from this. In particular, I note the fact that we're now in the current year going to be planting over 11,000 trees, and it should be noted that I think the figure for last year was 5,200, so that's more than 100% increase. And 2 years ago, it was 1,600, so increase seems to be we're continuing to accelerate. It was only 36, by the way, in 2017-18, so it just shows you there's been a transformation in terms of that activity, and I think that will be reflected in other areas. Now, obviously, the world being the world at the moment, there's a limit of what any council can do on these issues, but I think if it is absolutely essential that we play our role and do our part. The one question I wanted to raise was there is an objective under the action plan under resource management number 1 relates to reduction in use of single-use plastics. Now, I anticipate that the statistics are not to hand at this stage, but I'm just wondering at what point will we know whether we've achieved anything against the baseline. It's quite a difficult target to achieve. The steps to achieve it are not entirely clear. Obviously, there may be a publicity campaign, but it's not that simple in terms of the reduction of the use of single-use plastics as opposed to the increase in the recycling and reuse. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Celine, can you?
Chair, I suppose two aspects to that. I suppose we start again with ourselves as the Council and, as a large organisation and look to deal with that issue internally. And I know that we have, again, made considerable progress there. Anybody will notice there is no longer the plastic cups at the drinking stations, and equally in the canteens. There's a lot less available there. I mean, it is all proper reuse items. COVID did have an impact in the wider sense, not so much for ourselves, but again, it has given us an opportunity to look at any of our outlets, and we have built it into, for example, the Gorchin Glens Forest Park, the catering concession there. We made it a requirement that there wouldn't be single-use plastics, that all items would be recyclable that were used there in terms of catering. So, work in progress there, but difficult to measure too as to what was your starting point and where you get to. But the aim, obviously, to get to zero single-use plastics. In a wider sense across the district, and I suppose in particular in relation to businesses, really a key area there would be the catering and in particular takeaway catering facilities and indeed supermarkets that offer food takeaway services. I suppose first and foremost, we would be looking towards the legislation that is due around single-use plastics, and I just can't recall when that is anticipated, but it certainly has been consulted upon and is very much likely to come forward. Then again, I think the Council has a supportive role to try and raise awareness and try and support many of which of these small businesses in terms of sourcing alternative products that can be used for takeaway facilities, and trying to assist them in a transition to removing the use of single-use plastics. So that is one that, as again the member has identified, it'll be difficult to measure, but is one that's certainly again under consideration and in development.
Okay, thanks, Celine. We've heard it proposed, by Councillor McCaffrey and seconded by Councillor O'Coffey, that we note this update. Anybody in controversy to that? Councillor Curry, your hand's up now.
No dissension from that, Chair. It's just to say again, thank you to Celine and actually to all of our council team for the way that they have embraced this and the progression on it, even at this early stage. You know, it's really great to see it. There's an awful lot of work contained within the 5 pages of that report, Chair. I do just have a question, and I'm not sure if Celine can answer it there, but just around the energy and buildings and Chair, just we had some of us had a walk around the fantastic new Erin campus of the Southwest College there on Monday night, and I know there was a similar tour in previous weeks, and I'm just wondering, are we able to sort of glean or tap in just in line with the collaboration that Celine spoke about there? Are we able to tap into some of the knowledge there that they have obviously got? Because we were being told about, you know, how they account for the energy that's used and all of that just could be very useful and very helpful to our own council come with that. And just to say, Chair, the Erin campus, as it is the largest building in the world with the Passive House Premium accreditation, and we were told about how it's not only you know, self-sustainable in terms of energy, but is actually producing energy that they can store for later use or might even be able to be used to as energy supply in the workhouse that the council's working on. I think there's just a lot of knowledge. There's an awful lot of knowledge here locally. The Crest Centre's been there, as you know, for years, Chair, and that knowledge has grown. I'm just checking that we're tapping into that if possible, Chair. But
Okay.
it works, Celine and all the team.
Okay, Celine.
Yes, Chair, and you can see there Chair, at 2.2.2, you can see that the Southwest College was one of the presenters at the workshop that we had with our community planning partners. They gave a presentation about the building, again about the energy data, the measurement and issues there, and they then went on to talk about an approach they're taking, which is described as One Planet Living, which is really, I suppose, their mechanism to adopt sustainability in a wider sense as well, which aligns very closely to our action plan. And you know, it's just another branding of an action plan as well. So yes, we are working actively with the college, and it was a good opportunity not just to learn from them, but also for our partners to hear about it as well, without everyone having the opportunity to visit in person.
Okay, this report is for notation. I'm getting more and more now speakers wanting to come in. They've all already had a proposer and a seconder. So nobody else will be accepted other than those that are awaiting. Councillor Wilson, you're next in line.
Yes, Chair. Well, just to inform the councillors, over the last fortnight we have planted somewhere in the region of 500 trees, and we didn't need Blair Bailey or anybody else to tell us to do that. That's what the farming industry does. So just to let you know that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bert. Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment. Delighted to hear all that Selena said. And just to add to that, my compliments to the council team that are working with St. Kevin's College to try and enhance the students' knowledge of all of these issues, and hopefully there is the makings of a very good programme which could be rolled out wider afield. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. And the last speaker is Councillor Emmett McAleer. If you keep your comments short, please.
No problem, Chair. Yeah, first off, just to, I suppose, welcome the lead Climate Change and Sustainable Development Officer into their new post they started at the beginning of this year. And secondly, just because it's kind of veered into talk about Southwest College as an employee, I'd declare an interest in relation to that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, members, we've heard that everybody very supportive there of the document proposed by Councillor McCaffrey and seconded by Councillor O'Coffey. Anybody dissenting from that? No dissent, so that's passed. We're moving on now to correspondence 8.1. To consider correspondence date the 10th of February 2022 from the Department of Education regarding COVID measures in schools. Alison?
Yes, Chair. It just really, this followed on from a series of representations that the council had made, and I suppose just in summary, this was really at the time of the debate around clean air and the associated equipment for schools, but also then the provision of face coverings. And then members will remember when we first discussed this, we were obviously at the earlier part of the winter, and there were concerns particularly around pupils being in rooms with windows open and really allowing some flexibility in terms of the school uniform policy. So the ministers responded to each of those issues, Chair, and I suppose noting on the latter point that there is flexibility for each school in relation to their own policy, uniform policy requirements.
Okay, the first speaker in this is Councillor McAleer. Again, I'm looking for a proposal to note.
I'll start by proposing the note.
Okay, thank you.
I'm very disappointed with the response again. It's referenced at the beginning of the meeting, but the fact this was sent on the 18th of January and we didn't get a response until the 10th of February. Again, this delay isn't good. But just being mindful, I suppose, of the ongoing freezing conditions that we have had in the district and locally, this is still something that's very relevant. And I would have to say that the language used by the Minister is to an extent shirking her responsibilities as the Minister, because the legislation surrounding this, the Education and Libraries Order, actually says that as the Minister and as a department, they have an expedient responsibility to remedy any complaint. Now, I don't know if they've taken this as raising an issue, if there's specific terminology about, again, the intricacies of your linguistics, but I would like to see this progressed, and I propose that we do actually raise this as a complaint if needs be, because there's action needs to be taken in relation to this, because it's an ongoing issue that has been highlighted to me. Using language such as encouraged to be flexible and may not be, as she does at the bottom of the first page, it's ignoring the issue essentially. It's not helping to remedy the issue as stated in legislation. It's not good leadership. We have parents who may not be able to afford uniform replacements or substantial clothes to clothe their children due to price hikes on most essentials. And ultimately, this is a welfare issue. So I would be proposing that we do progress this as a complaint. I think it needs to come from a body, as noted in the legislation, and not an individual, because when it comes from an individual, the focus could fall on a specific location or premise, and that leaves the opportunity for other instances to fall through the gap. If you look at the specific legislation, it states in section 101 that the department may give directions to any relevant authority as to exercise by that authority of any power conferred or the performance of any duty imposed on that authority or by any provision under the education orders. They classify under the 2003 Act in Article 18 abuse to include sexual abuse, but also abuse causing physical or mental harm to a child. And that in terms of making representation, maybe we should be making representation to the department so that they can contact the Board of Governors or the relevant departments within schools. We have to.
Sorry, I'm gonna actually come to a close because there are other speakers on this.
Just very briefly, Chair, a couple more lines just and I'll be finished then. The subsequent article states to determine the measures to be taken at the school, whether by the Board of Governors, the staff or the school or other persons with a view to protecting pupils from abuse, whether it's school or elsewhere. The main issues, and this is concluding now, Chair, the main issues here are the potential for bullying, which is a huge emotional and mental impact on children. For those, for example, who aren't able to afford an expensive uniform or
Okay,
uniform
I'm
commensurate
going
with.
to ask you a
And
direct
secondly,
question
as
here. I'm
last
going to
thing,
ask you a direct question here. What exactly is your proposal? Because I couldn't. You said about making a complaint. Is that correct? What
Chair,
exactly is your
the
proposal?
content of the letter seems to indicate that although we have referenced this as an issue, because it hasn't been raised as a complaint, the minister is essentially not proceeding with the action available to her
So
as a
what
minister.
action are you proposing?
So I'm proposing we go back to her and raise the issue as a complaint formally, so that action is taken.
Right. So you're asking that we go back as a council on her letter to ask her again with regard to a complaint.
Yes.
That's fine.
Back to the
If
department.
just to clarify the issue.
Yes,
because
so
I
it's
was
reverting to the
you had a
minister
lot
to
say there.
raise, so this can be raised. And just the
Okay.
final line was just in relation,
Okay,
we
thank
discussed
you.
this previously.
Councillor Swift.
Gurmagat Cahirlock, and can I just check with Emmett then before I would second that, is the complaint about the minister to the minister, and is that the appropriate route to go? And if so, then yes, I would be happy enough to second that. And I want to come back on the first content of the letter, with issues of which I had raised initially anyway, about the air filtration and the protection for our teachers and all staff and pupils alike who are working in these still very hazardous conditions. And as was mentioned by Josephine earlier on, you know, we're still in the community transfer of Omicron. It hasn't gone away. And indeed, this letter is rather insulting to all of the staff who are still trying to do their very best in what has been described as Baltic conditions. And we only know ourselves how cold it is, and how would any of us like to have to work in those classrooms with the windows wide open and having to wear layers and layers to keep warm. It's just not good enough. And as I had said previously, while we're all trying to do our best through this pandemic, I feel it is an unacceptable problem that is continuing. And unfortunately, in this instance, the minister has completely negated her responsibilities to even care about the staff working in our district. And the letter just really seems to say, get on with it. Now, while I can accept that she has taken advice on these air filtration systems, still at the end of the day, a little bit of time and care and due consideration to all who are working in these extreme conditions should be given also. Just a bit of clarification on the complaint aspect, and once that's given, I would be happy to second it. Gurmagat.
But you're seconding the noting, is that correct, Councillor Swift?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to Councillor McAleer to clarify that point.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thanks, Councillor Swift, for the support. It's not in this instance to make a complaint about the minister. It's to register our concerns as a complaint, because seemingly we've raised this as a matter of interest, but it hasn't been progressed as it should be, because she has the powers, or her department has the powers, to enforce legislative change and enforce action for the schools in question. So it's to proceed this to the next level, that he does take action, or department takes action.
That's clear to myself now as well, so that's great. Okay, thank you. And the last speaker, Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Very much in support of the proposal. I think that this is genuinely quite heartless sort of approach to things. The logic of the letter we've received from the minister is really that because they aren't putting in this ventilation, the solution must be to keep the windows open, and then for the school uniform policies to be varied to ensure, as they call it, the comfort and well-being. And we all know what that means. I would like to propose that we also raise this issue with the Children's Commissioner, because there are clear welfare implications as a result of this. I note from stuff that the TUC has produced in England that the recommendation is for 6 air changes per hour as a safe level of ventilation. And you can imagine what that means is basically that if you're going to heat up air to any sort of ambient temperature that's safe for human continuous habitation, you're going to have to heat that amount of air constantly 6 times an hour. And leaving the windows open is no solution. And I think the truth of the whole situation was carried by the Belfast Telegraph in an article where the Department for Education spokesperson said that air cleaning units are not required in every classroom. To install them would cost around 40 million. And that's the real problem here, is they're trying to cut costs, and the children and the teachers are going to pay the price for it. So
You're
thank you,
making
Chair.
a separate proposal then to the Children's Commissioner, that's correct. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor McAleer. Councillor Deehan, do you wish to come in? Councillor
No,
Deehan?
Chair, I was going to support to second Councillor O'Coffey's proposal, Chair.
Okay, well, yeah, I have Councillor McAleer. Okay, members, two proposals. First of all, we have proposed to note and that there is no dissent from. We've then had the proposal from Councillor McAleer and seconded by Councillor Swift, and that was to write back as we as stated there. Any objection to that? Councillor Baird, you dissenting?
Yes, Chair. As a chair of a board of governors of a post-primary school, I'm very uncomfortable with this. I deem that I have an interest, so I'm declaring that interest.
You're declaring an interest. Okay, Councillor Baird. So I've no other dissent from that, so that's passed. The second way is Councillor O'Coffey, and that's been supported by Councillor McAleer. That was a separate proposal, and that was to address this issue with the Children's Commissioner with regard to ventilation. Any dissenters from that proposal? Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald, you dissenting?
No, Chair, it was just the previous one I'd been laid on to declare interest on Board of Governors as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Okay, so I'm not getting any dissent to the last proposal, which was Councillor O'Coffey's, which is the Children's Commissioner. Councillor Baird, I see your hand again.
Yeah, again, in similar vein, declaring interest. I'm not taking part in that. Thank you.
Okay, members, so both those are passed then, and the notation was passed. We'll move on to the next item of correspondence, and that's to 8.2, to consider correspondence dated 11th of February 2022 from the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs regarding future agricultural policy proposals for Northern Ireland consultation. Alison, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, and we did circulate this letter to members when we received it. We had requested the extension. The Minister declined, and this is just the formal confirmation of that position. And we did, as you know, make the submission in advance of the deadline.
So really, we've made the submission since the initial request. I'm looking for a proposer to note. Councillor Anthony Feely. Sorry, Councillor Diane Armstrong was the first one there, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I just propose to note.
Okay, Councillor Feely.
Just second it.
Okay, proposed and seconded. Okay, everybody in agreement? No dissenters to that? Okay, that's passed. The next one was to consider correspondence dated the 1st of March 2022 from the Department of Health regarding healthcare services. Alison?
Thank you, Chair. This is a follow-up letter. Members will recall that we had raised some specific queries regarding ear syringing provision and the outsourcing of this by various practices. And we had received an initial letter and then requested further information from the Minister. So really this is the substantive response now on the issue. And I suppose the detail is quite clear that unless there's very specific facilities in certain surgeries, there is an encouragement or an opting on behalf of patients to choose private provision.
Okay, members, first one in is Councillor O'Coffey.
Thanks, Chair. I think the Chief Executive is very accurate here. This is the substantive response. The first one we received was quite evasive, let's be honest. It denied that these services had been outsourced, and now we see that effectively, rather than wait, patients may prefer to seek or pay for private treatment. So The reality is that lack of investment in frontline NHS services is being used to push people through sheer desperation to pay large sums to get things done that they should be getting through free at the point of delivery on our NHS. And it seems Robin Swan is part of that equation, and that's very, very sad. And I hope maybe the next health minister might be slightly more progressive. But I'm happy to note this, but I think that this really exposes what's happening in our NHS as more and more services have been cut back and people are being forced to pay for a privatisation so that they'll piecemeal privatise the thing. And I also note in conclusion that they've introduced integrated care structures, which are a mechanism to advance both privatisation and rationing of our NHS services, and it'll hit us hardest down here in the southwest. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this was an issue I think I originally raised, and as Councillor Coffey stated there, we have finally got maybe to the bottom of it. It is privatisation. It is lack of investment. It is this is the thin edge of this thin end of the wedge. Where does this stop? If these facilities and to treat people aren't put into clinics, to GP clinics and surgeries, what else isn't going to be done? Are we just going to start privatising all sorts of things? I don't think it's good enough. I think it's outrageous for a health minister to come back and state so openly that this has been privatised. It's shocking. I don't like about writing more letters and toing and froing with letters, but I just don't think we should let this sit at this, and I think we should be writing back and pointing out that this is privatisation. It's the thin end of the wedge. It's we don't accept it. People in rural Fermanagh has a long way to travel to even get to to these places that do private or the private does the private clinics. It is shocking, and you know, I think we should be writing back and pointing that out, and especially as a rural constituency, it really affects us more than the likes of Belfast and Derry. And £65 or whatever it is to get this done is outrageous. This is something that the National Health Service always did, and now they're not doing it. And just blatantly not doing it and not caring that they don't do it. And I think we should be writing back very forcibly to the Minister, pointing this out, and that we as a rural councillor are not happy about it. So I would propose that we would do that. I don't think we should let it sit.
Okay, Councillor Green, you're quite happy to second the notation and make that proposal, is that correct?
Yeah.
That's lovely, okay. Next speaker on this is Councillor Keenan. Hold on, we get this mouse sorted out, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Firstly, again, I'd like to highlight the dates that the council sent the letter. 2 months till we got a reply. Seems to be a recurring theme, as I said previously. Secondly, some of the information that Robin Swan has provided in this letter doesn't seem to be consistent with what I've been told on the ground from many people and at least 4 different GP surgeries across Fermanagh. And that is that they've all been told the GPs no longer provide this service. That it was not a case if they got the equipment or not, and that no referrals were made in any of the instances, but all advice was to go private. So as the previous speaker said, it is privatisation by stealth, and it's a typical neoliberal strategy to take bite-sized chunks of any service and slowly start to privatise. So I'd be happy to second Councillor Green's proposal. I think we need to be very strong on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First proposal is to note, and that's from Councillor O'Coffey, seconded by Councillor Green. No disagreement there, is there? Okay, that's passed. The second proposal then is from Councillor Green and supported by Councillor Keenan. Any dissent from that? I'll bring Councillor Deehan in shortly, but I want to get some of these proposals off the table.
Yeah, I'm not I don't think the information provided in the proposal is quite accurate, Chair. So I will be dissenting from that. Thank you.
You're
I'll
dissenting.
explain why later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other dissenters to the second proposal? Councillor Irvine. Okay, so we've two dissenters, Councillor Deehan and Councillor Irvine. Sorry, I'm seeing Councillor Alex Baird. I'll tell you what, we're starting to see more here. So we're going to take this one to a vote. Can I
Chair, may I come in on a point of clarification, please?
You have a recorded vote, please, if it goes to the vote.
Chair, a point of clarification, please.
Yes, sorry, just hold on a sec, please, Councillor Deehan. Sorry, Councillor Deehan. So what you're actually looking is clarification on what
Yes.
Councillor Keenan said. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair. You know, it isn't accurate to say that the service is no longer provided under the NHS and that all patients who require this service need to have it done privately. It is provided both in primary care and also in ENT departments. I did explain the last time this issue came up that ear syringing, or more specifically referred to as ear irrigation and microsuction, they have been suspended during COVID, and I'm hopeful that those restrictions will be eased shortly. And the ENT departments do provide that microsuction service, which is very valuable. It is a two-tier service, Chair. I don't deny that. Those who can afford to pay do seek to have their treatment expedited by going privately, and that is the reality. I don't deny that, but it isn't accurate to say that the service is not currently is not available under the NHS.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Deehan. Did Councillor Keenan want to say anything before we could take this vote? Hold on a wee second till I get your mic on. Can IT take that screen down that I can control this, please? There, I've got it now then. Councillor Keenan, yes?
Thank you, Chair. Now, just for Councillor Deehan's information, what I was saying was, I think it was fairly clear, that across 4 different GP surgeries in Fermanagh, the service has not been offered and they are all being referred private or advised to go private. And if it goes to the vote, I'd like it recorded, please. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go for a recorded vote. IT, sorry about that, but we need to get voting here. So it's with regard to Councillor Keenan and Councillor Green. Okay, it's Councillor Green and Councillor Green. Are you indicating?
Yeah.
Who? Sorry, I thought my hand was down there, Chair. My apologies.
Okay, so we need to vote on this. Okay. Back to you shortly here, members, with the result. Chief Executive, do you want to? Oh, this one. 4, 7 against 9. You read them out, please. Chief Executive.
Yes, Chair. So there were 14 votes for, 11 votes against, and 2 abstentions. So the proposal is carried.
Okay, members, the proposal is carried. So I think that's all the proposals we had on that particular issue. Is that correct, Chief Executive? Right. The next action item is 8.4, to consider correspondence dated the 3rd of March 2022 from Paul Scully MP regarding St. Bridget's Day bank holiday. The copy is attached. I think Councillor Swift, you're looking to come in on this, please.
Yes, Gormagat Cahirlook, and I won't say I'm happy to note it, but I will note it. And it is unfortunate that the Parliamentary Under Secretary has made his decision, I suppose, on the government's response. And while he appreciates the sentiment behind the request and indeed the importance of St. Bridget's Day, the annual and leave entitlement, I suppose, is already set in stone. But I do note in his correspondence about the cost to the economy. That's the bit that irks me, especially given the problems of the British government's cost to our economy. So I think that line in itself is rather tragic for us. Anyway, furthering on where he actually also makes mention of the current arrangements would not take place without a full consultation. That's something that I definitely wish to pursue. I definitely think there is not just an appetite, but a definite want for the St. Bridget's Day to be recognised as a bank holiday, and certainly a holiday to be celebrated and all-embracing. As I said at the previous meeting, we have lots of associations here in County Fermanagh about St. Bridget. I'll not reiterate that piece of history again, but everybody's well known about it, especially in the Garrison Loch Melvin area. And I do want to see it become a reality, and I do want to be part of the ROI celebrations next year and the whole RTE coverage on the same day, because we have a lot to say about St. Bridget and everything and all of the wonderful things that has happened in County Fermanagh with that very powerful independent woman. So I do want to further pursue. So I would ask Alison if she has any further knowledge on that correspondence about the full consultation aspect, please. Gormagat.
Chair, no specific additional information, Councillor Swift. The thought, I suppose we could certainly seek some clarity as to what would trigger a consultation process for such a proposal. I did actually try and find that out, but it doesn't appear to be readily available. So that might be a route that we would pursue, and certainly what the actual mechanism for the creation of additional bank or public holidays would be. It's acknowledged, okay, that there is the consultation process, but probably the steps leading up to that are silent in the correspondence. So that might be the suggested course of action if members were content.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Alison. I would like to propose that accordingly, Howard, given that clarification from Alison, to pursue what the next steps would be. Gormagat.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to second that proposal. I think the response just illustrates a lack of awareness and a lack of knowledge really around the logic used by the council and the reason why this is already being proposed as a public and accepted as a public holiday down south, and why we're looking to get likewise here. I think the constant reference throughout to the economic impact is probably being over exaggerated, and I'm aware that this council as well is looking into and investigating and progressing the idea of a 4-day working week. So I'm kind of at a loss in relation to that. I must have missed as well the the consultation in relation to the Diamond Jubilee. But I note in the very next paragraph that he refers to the current pattern of bank holidays is well established and accepted. The fact that we have different bank holidays this year from previous years would kind of contradict that very statement. And I would be very supportive of progressing this and seeing about getting a full consultation. I think the benefits, not only as we've said earlier, we were celebrating International Women's Day yesterday. The benefits of this to people's welfare, and an extra day to enjoy with your family, with your friends, with your pets, whatever, is only a good thing. So, yeah, happy to support.
Willing to second the noting on the proposal. I'm seeing quite a few other members here. Councillor Feely?
Yeah, I'll be brief, Howard. Thanks for letting me in. Yeah, I was going to second the note of it, and like other members, they're very disappointed with the letter. I would have liked another bank holiday as well, although it won't be much difference to me on the farm, like there's still for other people. I don't like this about the money and 1.2 million for the Diamond Jubilee. Likely, it's good enough for the Diamond Jubilee, but it wasn't good enough for St. Bridget's. So that's all my comment on it. I'm just disappointed, but it all is me second now, so I was going to second it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Feely. Next one is Councillor Keenan, and again, please be brief. Hold on.
Chair, yeah, I'll be brief. Just, yeah, I'd fully support the idea of it. I think it should be the South have it. Why not have it in All Ireland? Holiday would make sense. And as Emmett pointed out, I was going to say the very same thing. I don't remember any process where we were consulted and having a Diamond Jubilee celebration. It was just sprung or on us. But yeah, there seems to be a disparity in two processes, how you go about getting a holiday. Thank you.
Okay. Next one I have is Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting to note, if you look up the amount of public holidays across Europe, the UK has the lowest number in the entire continent of Europe. In fact, a lot of countries has the double amount of public holidays than the UK. So I think that maybe sums up what the Tory government and British government think of the working people of the UK. And as we are deemed to be part of the UK, we are included in that disparity, where we are at the bottom, and that I never heard tell of him, that MP to come back with that answer is rather disgraceful. Also, the 1.2 billion that it's costing for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, outrageous, absolutely outrageous in this current climate, that this is what has been spent. Imagine what that could do to the National Health Service. Imagine what could be done right across places like Fermanagh and Omagh. You know, they might even be able to end up being able to fringe out people's ears that actually spend that money instead of spending it on this folly. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Councillor Green, that's very useful. Thank you. We move on now to Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There's just in the matter of UK having the lowest number of public holidays, I actually think that is not quite accurate. I think the lowest is actually the Republic of Ireland, who have just caught us up actually with their extra one. But in both cases, the point is well made. The working class people are usually treated very abysmally. And it is very interesting, if you read history of public holidays, to hear just how many have been lost over the last 100 or 150 years. It's been a constant process of squeezing every last ounce out of working class people.
Okay,
So I just want to raise a question, though. I thought that this was not an accepted matter or a reserved matter. So I'm wondering why, because I know Scottish holidays are different to English holidays. Public holidays, that is, and I'm wondering why we are going to London for something that I suspect may be within the prerogative of Stormont. Thank you, Chair.
Ask Alison to come in on that one, please.
Yes, Chair, certainly. Just if attached to the correspondence was our letter, so the specific proposal was that we make representations to the Secretary of State, the Prime Minister, the Taoiseach, and also copy the correspondence to RTE in terms of future programming. So there was no element of the proposal that related to the Northern Ireland Executive or the Executive Office.
Did you receive that, Councillor Coffey?
Yes, I did more than receive it, Chair. I read that, I was reading it earlier on, but I note where it comes from. But the point is that if we're serious about getting this, I think we need to go to those who make this decision. And I'm not convinced that St. Bridget's Day will be passed across the entire UK as a holiday. It has very significant connotations to Ireland in general, in bulk and so on. But we should be proposing, I think, to write to I don't know whether it is. There's a lot of, it's a grey area around labour law. I think most of the labour law is a transferred matter, but it may be that this is an accepted matter or a restricted matter. I think we need to work out which it is, and then we'll know who we need to write to advance it. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I take it, Alison, that is part of what the proposal was, to investigate that. Yes, thank you. I've several more speakers on this. Councillor Green, could you take your hand down, please? Councillor Coyle, John Coyle.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support what members have said. The issue around St. Bridget's Day, and I do believe in the South, it was about remembering people that had lost their lives in COVID. It was to coincide with St. Bridget's Day, and obviously in a rural area, St. Bridget is very poignant in our culture and in our rural area. But I don't think that the minister in Westminster realised that that was what we were doing as well, because we had lost so many in our community, and it was to remember them into the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coyle. The last speaker on this is Councillor Baird.
Thank you, Chair. I find it rather ironic, if not hypocritical, for some councillors to be criticising the one-off bank holiday that the Jubilee provides and the cost of that, while at the same time asking for a perpetual and annual bank holiday which perpetuate that cost ad infinitum. Mind you, having researched a bit about St. Bridget, I have some sympathy for her when she had the ability to turn water into beer. So we could be doing some of that tonight.
Okay, we've had a proposal.
Sorry, before can we have clarity on the proposal, please?
Right, we've a proposal to note the correspondence, and that's been proposed by Councillor Swift and seconded by Councillor McAleer. That's the first issue. Anybody disagreement with that to note the correspondence? Alec Baird, could you take your hand down, please? Take it. Okay, thank you. So that's passed. The proposal made by Councillor Swift and seconded by Councillor McAleer was for the Chief Executive to investigate further where this representation could be made to further this potential bank holiday, or public holiday, I should say. That was the proposal, if I'm clear on that. Is that
Sorry,
clear, Councillor Swift?
It's just to clarify what are the next steps, how we actually trigger the process for a consultation to begin, and the overall threshold and arrangements associated with that, and that we would write back in the first instance to the author of this correspondence, Chair, as he mentions the consultation within the documentation.
Okay, that's quite clear and succinct there. So with regard to that, I have that proposed and seconded. Anybody against that, please indicate now. Okay, that is passed. Thank you. We move on now to item 8.5, and there is one additional paper there, Chief Executive.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just one item. It's the notification of the National Association of Councillors Conference, which is to be held in the Royal Hotel Scarborough from the 8th to the 10th of April 2022. The details are on the correspondence, Chair, but the delegate fee is £350 plus VAT, and then accommodation would be available for £70 plus VAT per night, and then there would be the associated travel costs for attendance, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Irvine.
Proposed to note, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a Councillor Earl Thompson?
You, Chair. Second to note.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clark, you wish to?
Yeah, probably should have declared I'm just a member of the NAC, but I'm not going to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, we've had a proposal and the seconder to note the correspondence. Anybody dissents from that, please indicate now. Okay, that's passed. Members, I have several items of any other business, 3 in total. So I'm going to reserve that until we cover the confidential first of all. So at this stage, I think we're ready to go into confidential and then we will return to any urgent and relevant business. So could I ask for the recording? Sorry, first of all, can I get a proposal? Councillor Thompson, a seconder. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly, and that's to go into confidential into committee. Can we not? time's running against us. Councillor proposing and Councillor Donnelly seconding. Okay. Could I have a summary, please, Chief Executive?
Chair, thank you. While in committee, the Council considered the matters arising from the confidential minutes of the meetings held on the 31st of January and 9th of February. There were brief updates provided in terms of matters arising, Chair, and members noted those. And the Council also adopted the confidential staff matters report.
Okay, can I propose and second the summary? Councillor O'Coffey, Councillor Thompson. All agreed? Passed. Okay, we'll return now to any urgent and relevant business, and we'll try and get through this as best we can. The first one that contacted me was Councillor Keenan. Councillor Keenan, if you could be as quick as is possible, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I'll try and be quick. I'm sure that everyone here is well aware of the recent massive fuel price hikes and the pressures that it is already putting on people's lives. Numerous people have came to me and expressing their anger over the fuel hikes and the financial difficulty that it will put them in and is putting them in. There's also been great variations in pricing in certain areas. I've been told by people in Newtown Butler this week that diesel was 5p a litre more than this in Ski on the same day, and 10p cheaper in Enniskillen, and in Donaghmore and Tyrone the same day, 15p cheaper than Newtown Butler. So apart from those discrepancies, the wholesale price has gone up. There's also the issue of large companies like Shell, who last year made an incredible profit of 14.2 billion. These companies, I believe, should be able to soak up some of the increased fuel cost rises. All of the burden should not be on the poor and the working poor in the name of profit. But that's something we need to look at in the longer term. But apart from the few opportunistic suppliers exploiting the situation for profits, wholesale prices, as I said, are going up. And as well as that, so does the tax. As VAT is charged at 20% on the total cost, and 57.95p of duty is also taxed on every litre of diesel and petrol. On heat and oil, it is 10.7 pence per litre, and it has also seen massive increases. Other governments have already intervened, with Hungary being one of the first. It capped the diesel price at 130 a litre, whilst taking a hit in the tax. The Southern government here in Ireland are set to reduce the price by 20 pence a litre, by taking a hit on the tax as well. France are set to put a cap on fuel prices until the end of the year. So I would like to ask members to consider that we as a council body write to the Chancellor of the Exchequer to request that he cuts the VAT on the duty on petrol and diesel and home heating oil, and that he also cancels his plans to remove the rebate on red diesel. I think we've already requested that, but given the current hardships and financial stress that many people now find themselves in, I think the situation's changed, so I'd like to request it again. So I hope that all members will agree and support this request, as it's a very important issue which is affecting everyone in our district area. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker is Councillor Baird.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It probably surprise you as a neoliberal that I will support Councillor Keenan in this. The only problem I would see is that I have been reading that the VAT, that the UK government doesn't have the discretion to reduce the VAT because of the protocol of all things. And I think I would love to see the reduction in VAT and tax. And I do believe, again, that there has been speculation on this. So I will certainly second Councillor Keenan's proposal, but that caveat needs to be noted about the inability by the UK government without EU agreement to be able to reduce VAT. Thank you, Chair. Chair, have you lost me?
We lost the chamber, I think.
I don't have to go over that again.
Don't boil your cabbage twice. I think we have lost the chamber. All right.
At what stage?
Scrambling.
We may talk among ourselves.
Good idea.
Probably playing scrambling, whatever it does.
Probably the Hoover has fell against the socket again.
Or the sprocket.
some advantages of being online.
Yeah, you're right.
That is an interesting point on the VAT, though. I was reading that, and it amazes me. But there you go.
How does Ireland get, or the South get away with
I
it?
don't know, Thomas. I mean, I thought about that when I was saying it. How the ERA do it, I don't know. But they seem to have managed. But it's something to do written into the.
We have a problem.
The VAT range, the VAT rate would be has to be agreed.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt about it. Somebody's speculating on the prices.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's a good idea. And Thomas, you could suggest we write a letter down south to see how they got round it. Or
There's some crowd of speculators apparently have had a ship at sea for.
Oh, here we are.
Ship at sea for 2 years.
Listen,
and
we
they've
have a
brought it in.
problem.
But at Councillor Baird, so we got all of the other information, so we're okay. We could just hope. So it's only very temporary.
There we are.
Did you miss me, Chair?
Yes.
Lots.
Well, I heard that the whole network was down, so it wasn't just yourself I was missing there, Councillor Baird.
No, the WebEx folk
Okay,
were.
sorry, hold on, Councillor Baird. We're in the middle of Councillor Coffey, so I'm going to let Councillor Coffey finish and then come to you.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to get to the point, really, I think that as you can't control what you don't own, the solution must be in the nationalization of these energy giants. They're making billions and billions of dollars. Lots of countries have nationalized energy sector businesses. I don't see why we wouldn't. So I'd like to request if the proposal might be adjusted to actually include the demand for the nationalization of these. That's what I'd like to propose. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Baird.
I'll try and go over what I'd already said. I said it was surprising to me as a neoliberal coming in to support Councillor Keenan, but the principle of what he was saying, I would agree. The difficulty I understand is the setting of the VAT rate. That, surprising enough, UK cannot change the VAT rate because of the protocol of all things. I read that at the weekend. And as I say, I was prepared to support Councillor Keenan and what he was doing, but if Councillor Coffey's amendment about nationalisation is included, I can't support that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Irvine?
In a similar vein to my colleague, Councillor Baird, Alec is right. This is a reserved matter. VAT is reserved to the UK Treasury. We would have to write to them. I think it is a valid point that Councillor Keenan is writing and talking about, because in the short term, fuel prices will not go down, they will go up. And if further sanctions occur and oil is cut off from Russia, it's going to have a domino effect and it's going to go up. Bearing in mind that, like alcohol, the largest proportion of the price, the pump price, is tax and VAT. So I think the Exchequer has to take on board that with base costs rising, the tax revenue intake is going to go up exponentially as well. And therefore it's going to hit right across the board. So I think what we need is right across the board, look at this from the Treasury and say they will bring in temporary relief. And the issue with regard to construction, red diesel, has already been made to me in regard to a lot of people. We as a council have written in that regard, but it's probably just as well that we re-emphasise that point. So I would support the original proposal. I won't support if there's an amendment coming forward from Councillor Coffey with regard to renationalisation.
Okay, and we have Councillor Michael Duff.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I had written to you prior to the meeting about rising costs of living. So I would have a proposal as well, which is that we as a council hold a special council meeting on the rising costs of living. They are spiralling out of control, and it is a crisis. And at the start of this mandate, we had a poverty conference. The struggle is real. Of course, it predates the Ukrainian situation, you know, the way it's developing. But what we need to do is take stock of developing issues, give voice to local people's concerns, but also agree actions that we might have some direct responsibility for. and also the impact on the council itself, services and operational costs, etc. But today I would have met a group of carers who, for example, are turning down overtime because of the fuel costs involved in travelling. We all know that's a big issue. I also spoke to a young parent today who works in the health sector, in the health service, and whose earnings take that person over the threshold of getting support, to move into a new home, and they've no furniture for them or their children. So
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I am running out of time.
people are being severely impacted. So there's a lot of issues here. I can put it in writing till the chief executive and the chair of the council, as to the rationale for this. But I propose that we have a special council meeting on the rising costs of living and what practical actions we can take. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Just to take that one on its own, do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Clark seconding. Is there any dissent from that, the last proposal from Barry here? Councillor O'Coffey is dissenting. Okay, so everybody else in agreement? That's fine, that's passed. Now we're getting back to the original proposal. And have you any changes to your original proposal or additions, Councillor Keenan?
No, well, I'm happy enough for Donald's addition in it, yeah.
So you'll put down the nationalisation?
Yeah, no problem. I believe that should be the way forward, yeah.
Okay, members. It looks like we have dissent in the chamber, so I'm going to look. Sorry, Councillor Green, you're the last speaker here.
Thank you, Chair. No, it was just around the price that's happening. I read today that if the British government cut in half the tax that they take on the price of diesel and petrol, if they cut it in half, they would still be making more money, more on taxes than they would have this time last year.
Okay, Seamus, I know, but we've got to get this vote through with the constraints on time placed upon me. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah, well, we were off for near 10 minutes during the meeting, Chair. But anyway, I respect the Chair's decision. But anyway.
Okay, so we're going to go to a vote on Councillor Keenan's. Okay, so we're getting the vote taken on Councillor Keenan's original proposal with the addition of the nationalisation covered by Councillor Coffey. And
I'd originally seconded Councillor Keenan's, but withdrew my seconding because of the nationalisation issue. Who has seconded Councillor Keenan's proposal?
Sorry, Councillor McAleer.
Right.
He had seconded Councillor Keenan's proposal.
I must have got in when I was cut off at that time. Thank you.
Perhaps when you were cut off, yeah. Okay, we're looking at a recorded vote here before we start voting. So can we get ready to vote here? Yeah. Another one to get through quickly, isn't it? Okay, Chief Executive, can I ask you for the result?
Yes, Chair, thank you. So there were 14 votes for, 12 votes against and 1 abstention. So that proposal is carried.
Okay, thank you, members. With regard to special counsel, perhaps that's something that can be mentioned at the first council meeting. I have one more item to get through, so if I have time, I'll get through it. Councillor, sorry, I'm being. Okay, Councillor Thompson about the special council meeting, please, quickly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor McDuff has actually spoken to me as well on it, so there's not an issue there, but I suppose with regard to the Chief Executive, we're probably going to run into the purdah period. So I take direction from the Chief Executive on it. Thank you, Chair.
Very briefly, because I'm mindful of time, we would certainly look at the scheduling, but what may be a suggestion if members were so minded, Chair, because March is quite busy, unless we were to move the Brexit meeting from March to April and take Monday the 21st as the slot for the special council meeting and put Brexit into April. That would be a suggestion. It would be before the pre-election sensitivity period as well, if there was a general view around that, and I could engage more fully, but that would be my suggestion at this stage, Chair.
Do we have a proposal from you, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that we have the special council meeting on Monday the 21st of March 2022, and that the Brexit committee meeting now takes place in April 2022. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, next in line, Councillor Green.
Yeah, I would second that, Chair.
Okay, heard it proposed and seconded. All in agreement? Any dissenters? No. The last item is probably a very short period of time. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very briefly. I'd like to ask if the Chair would agree to grant the Chair's reception in recognition of the retirement of Seamus McElhinney, Head of Equine at Caffrey and Enniskillen after 21 years with Caffrey. In his time as Principal, he has elevated this college to a world-class educational establishment specialising in equine management, attracting generous bursaries for students from globally significant players such as the Aga Khan, Studs, Godolphin, and so on, amounting to £62,000. And he's developed a lot of linkages globally, most recently with Kentucky. So in honour of his achievements and the acclaim he's brought to our district, I'd like to ask if the Chair would kindly grant a reception.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
I'm going to look for a seconder before I come to the Chair, if that's possible. Councillor Irvine. I'll hand over to the Chair now.
Thank you again, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Armstrong, for that proposal, and Councillor Irvine for seconding it. I don't have a problem with that. Obviously, we'll have to link in with the Chief Executive and Leanne with regard to diary dates, and obviously not on the purdah period as well. Thank you.
Okay, and Diana, you can submit the paperwork if you can, please, in compliance. Members, you've heard that proposal and seconder. All in agreement? Okay, thank you. Councillor Green, you're looking in again?
Yeah, just to clarify, I don't think Porta would, or whatever the new term it is, would have anything to do with the likes of that. Can the Chief Executive just clarify, because I would have thought it was only anyone that was connected to the election directly.
Okay, Seamus, I'll get a response and then we'll have to close.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, happy to clarify, Chair. No, that's correct from Councillor Green. There's specific sensitivities about those who are standing for election, but normal council business such as receptions, normal business would continue. Obviously, then how the events would be promoted and publicised thereafter, there would be some sensitivities, but no, we would be able to proceed with our business such as that reception and indeed our normal meetings and activities.
Okay, thank you, members. Thank you all. We were complete and just more or less run out of time here, so thank you for your cooperation.